Chapter 643. After checking the talent tree, Lu Yi woke up and took out the many spirit sticks that he had just bought. As time passed, the spirit sticks were crushed one after another. Rich and pure spirit qi gushed out, and the man and the spirit eagerly devoured and cultivated. A day later, all the spirit sticks were used up. Lu Yi silently sensed his own body. His cultivation level had not improved by much. After all, the total duration of those spirit sticks could not compare to a single golden spirit stick. At his level of cultivation, 1 or 2 golden spirit sticks could no longer break through. However, cultivation was like this. Bit by bit accumulation, quantitative change would lead to qualitative change. Without the spirit sticks, Lu Yi swallowed spirit pills and continued to cultivate. He showed his face in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and caused a storm. Although he wore a mask the entire time and didn't reveal his true appearance, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge who were certain that he was hiding in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance were able to make some deductions from some clues. Now, there were definitely many Myriad Demon Ridge experts waiting outside the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Lu Yi had no intention of leaving this place in a short time. In a flash, another few days passed. Cultivating for a long time was a little boring, especially since Lu Ye's cultivation method was different from others. When other cultivators inhaled and exhaled the spirit qi of heaven and earth, they had to immerse themselves and concentrate. During the process of cultivation, it was difficult to notice the passage of time. Perhaps a few days had passed during a cultivation session. This was also the reason why cultivators with higher cultivation levels often went into seclusion for a year and a half or even longer. They could not detect the passage of time. Lu Yi was different. His cultivation mainly relied on swallowing spirit pills and did not delay him from doing other things. Therefore, it was easy for him to feel bored after a long time. Usually, when encountering such a situation, Lu Yi would stop cultivating and walk around. However, it was not good to walk around in the current situation. After thinking about it, Lu Yi decided to enter the mirage to hone his saber skills. The cultivation of saber skills was undoubtedly much more difficult than the improvement of cultivation level. The improvement of cultivation level could be felt, but not saber skills. Before breaking through a bottleneck, the improvement of saber skills was extremely slow. There might not be much change for a long time, but once a bottleneck was broken, it would enter a different realm. His mind was immersed in the storage space on his back. Lu Yi was ready to take out the breath fruit core. However, a moment later, when the breath fruit core appeared in his palm, he was stunned for a moment. The breath fruit core seemed to be a little different from before. Although the rest fruit core was the core of the rest fruit, this thing actually looked like a piece of sapphire at first glance. When Lu Yi first came into contact with this thing, he was very curious. How could a fruit core look like this? At that time, he only felt that there was nothing too strange in this boundless universe. But later on, he gradually understood that this was not strictly a fruit core. This thing was a carrier that had been bestowed with a special ability by the heavens. It was a key to unlocking the mirage, so its external appearance was not the main point. There were many complicated patterns on the surface of the sapphire-like fruit core, making it look extremely complicated. Even though Lu Yi had great attainments in the way of spiritual tattoos, he couldn't see what these lines meant. Moreover, during his observation, he even had an illusion that his whole mind was being sucked into the core of the breath fruit. What made Lu Yi even more puzzled was where was the other breath fruit core. He had one, and he got another from the spoils of war a few days ago. There were 2 in total. Furthermore, they looked almost identical. He put them both into the storage space on the back of his hand. But now, there was only one left. There was no situation of overlooking. The storage space on the back of his hand was formed by void tattoos. Although the space was not small and stored a lot of things, Lu Ye's mind was immersed in it. He could easily find what he wanted from inside. Now, there was only one breath fruit core left. The other one had disappeared. Furthermore, the surface of the breath fruit core in his hand had many more complicated patterns. This made Lu Yi involuntarily have some conjectures. This thing, confused with each other? The 2 breath fruit cores were put together by him. Without him noticing, the two breath fruit cores fused into one. Although it sounded a little outrageous, this was the only explanation. Not giving up, he searched again and still did not find the second breath fruit core. It seemed that the two breath fruit cores had really fused into one. The original breath fruit core allowed him to enter the mirage to hone his blade skills. Now, what was the use of the new breath fruit core? No matter what the use was, he would know after trying it. Lu Yi held the breath fruit core in the palm of his hand, channeled his spirit power into it, and immersed his mind. His vision blurred, and he had appeared in a small enclosed space. In front of him was a quaint door. A line of big words was printed into his vision. To enter the mirage, 100 merit points are required. It was exactly the same as what he saw before. There seemed to be no change. Just as Lu Yi thought so, the corner of his vision suddenly glanced to the other side. He turned his head and looked surprised. Because in this direction, there was also a door. There was also a line of big words on it. To enter the mirage, 10,000 merit points are required. 110,000, the difference was 100 times. What was certain was that in the past, there was only one door in this small enclosed space, and it was the door that required 100 merit points to open. After opening the door, one would enter an environment shrouded in thick fog. From the fog, cultivators and all kinds of insect figures would constantly rush out, allowing one to hone their skills and killing techniques. Where did this door that cost 10,000 merit points lead to? Why did the fusion of the two breath fruit cores with the same effect produce such a change? Lu Yi suddenly felt that the breath fruit cores did not seem to be as simple as he thought. The heavens gave the two breath fruit cores the effect of leading to the mirage. When the two breath fruit cores that could lead to the mirage merged, they not only retained the original effect, but also had another effect that Lu Yi had never seen before. Judging from the cost of the merit points, the place this second door led to must be dangerous. Of course, it might not be so. Everything needed to be explored. Under normal circumstances, Lu Yi might not enter the second door. After all, he was now just a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. He was not qualified to intervene in dangerous places. But this was the mirage. Even if he died, he would not really die. He would only feel some pain. As for 10,000 merit points, other cultivators might not be able to take it out, but it was really nothing for Lu Yi. So after looking at the second door for a moment, Lu Yi made a decision. No matter where the second door led to or what dangers were inside, he had to see it with his own eyes. At most, he would lose 10,000 merit points and be killed. After making up his mind, Lu Yi immediately walked to the newly appeared second door and raised his hand to push it open. The back of his hand slightly warmed, and 10,000 merit points were deducted. The heavy door was slowly pushed open, and Lu Yi stepped in. The moment he stepped through the door, Lu Yi suddenly had a surreal feeling, as if he had suddenly broken free from some shackles and become much stronger. But he did not have time to think about it, because every time he entered an unfamiliar environment, the first thing he had to do was hide his body and be vigilant to avoid being sneak attacked. So when he passed through the door, Lu Yi constructed concealment and aura concealment spirit tattoos to enhance his body. At the same time, he raised his hand and pressed the hilt of the mountain coiling saber at his waist, ready to attack. Almost at the same time as Lu Yi passed through the newly appeared door and entered this unknown space, in the guest room, the sleeping Hu Pe and the cultivating Yi both noticed the abnormality and opened their eyes to look at Lu Yi. At this moment, the spirit and the tiger both had a very strange feeling, as if Lu Yi had suddenly disappeared. But he was clearly in front of them. Yi was a little flustered. Even though she knew it was not a good time to disturb Lu Yi, she could not help but call out softly, "Lu Yi?" There was no response. Yi got up and came to Lu Ye's side. After carefully observing for a moment, she put her trembling hand under Lu Ye's nose and tested it. Suddenly, she burst into tears. "Lu Yi?" She could not feel Lu Ye's breathing, and she could feel that Lu Yi seemed to have lost something very important. As a spirit, although her cultivation was not high and was only equal to Lu Ye's, her perception of the soul was still very sharp. At this moment, there was no trace of the soul in Lu Ye's body. In other words, Lu Yi was only left with a physical body, and it was not breathing. Hu Po was also frightened and hurriedly ran in front of Lu Yi, patting him with his paw. Lu Yi is dead. He sat on the ground, sobbing nonstop. She was drowned in deep sorrow. Hoopa was scared out of his wits and growled at Lu Yi, but he did not get any response. How could he suddenly die without any reason? He was clearly still cultivating just now. But on second thought, that was not right. If Lu Yi was dead, then what about his tiger life? He turned his head and growled at it. He could see through Hoopa's thoughts. After being reminded by Hoopa, she immediately reacted. Not only did Lu Yi and Hoopa have a pet contract, but they also formed a life origin technique. As Lu Yi's destined demonic beast, if Hoopa died, Lu Yi would be injured. But if Lu Yi died, Hoopa would not be able to live alone. And Yi was Hoopa's companion spirit. If Hoopa died, she would not be able to live either. So Lu Yi's life and death were not only related to himself, but also the survival of a spirit and a tiger. Now that Hoopa and Yi were both safe and sound, it could only mean one thing. Lu Yi was still alive. Realizing this, Yi hurriedly suppressed the sorrow in her heart. Sobbing, she reached out her hand and tested Lu Yi's breathing again. It was very, very weak, but there was indeed breathing. The great ups and downs of her emotions caused Yi to almost collapse to the ground. But she really could not understand what Lu Yi had done to suddenly become like this. In her perception, Lu Yi was clearly only an empty shell left here. She did not know where his soul had gone. Chapter 644. In an unknown environment, Lu Yi held his saber vigilantly, but he soon relaxed because there was no danger around. Unlike the situation he encountered when he entered the Mirage Realm, there was no fog around, and no monsters suddenly appeared. He was in a room. The doors and windows were closed, and the furnishings in the room were very simple. There was only a table and a few chairs. There was a teapot and a few teacups on the table. Lu Yi stepped forward and looked at the table. He found that the table was covered with a thick layer of dust. Obviously, no one had lived here for a long time. This seemed to be a place for guests, and there was a staircase leading upstairs. Lu Yi looked at the stairs and did not go up immediately, revealing a thoughtful look. He was very curious about where this place was. When he entered the Mirage Realm for experience, the environment was very simple. It was an open area surrounded by fog, and from time to time, enemies would rush out. But after the fusion of the two breath fruit cores and he pushed open the second door, he actually appeared in such a strange place. What made him feel even more strange was his current state. In fact, when he first came in, he noticed some wonderful changes in his body, but he did not have time to investigate. Now that he was sure there was no danger for the time being, he began to check his condition. After a moment of silent perception, Lu Yi raised his brow. Things seemed to be not simple. He found that his strength had skyrocketed a lot out of thin air. Originally, his cultivation was only at the 5th order Cloud River realm. But now, the strength contained in his body was far beyond that. He was probably stronger than those 9th order Cloud River realm cultivators he had encountered before. In other words, he was now very likely equivalent to a true Lake Realm cultivator. As for what true Lake Realm he was at, Lu Yi really did not know. He had not been in contact with many true Lake Realm cultivators. Without a comparison, it was really difficult to judge his current strength. When he stepped through the door, Lu Yi suddenly had a feeling that he had become stronger. Now it seemed that it was not an illusion. He had indeed become stronger. But why was this? Could this environment improve his strength for no reason? This obviously did not make sense. What made Lu Yi even more puzzled was that the power flowing in his body was not only spirit energy, but also another strange power that gave him a strange sense of familiarity. Was this the power of his soul? When Lu Yi saw the essence of this power, he could not help but frown. What was going on? He was just a 5th order Cloud River realm cultivator. Even if he was now equivalent to a true lake stage cultivator, he shouldn't have been able to sense spiritual energy. Every cultivator was born with the power of the soul. As the cultivator's strength increased, the power of the soul would also increase correspondingly. However, before the Divine Sea realm, cultivators only had the power of the soul. They could only use the power of their soul to passively resist some attacks aimed at the soul. There was no way for them to actively feel the attacks. This was equivalent to a hidden treasure within a cultivator's body. Cultivators who were not strong enough would not be able to open this treasure. Only those who had reached the spirit sea realm and developed spiritual will would be able to sense the existence of their own spiritual energy and use it. For example, although Lu Ye's spiritual energy was powerful enough to allow him to perceive many potential dangers, this kind of perception was strictly a passive ability and paled in comparison to the active use of his divine sense. The battles between spirit sea realm cultivators often involved the confrontation of spiritual wills. Sometimes it might seem calm on the surface, but in reality, it was extremely dangerous. Lu Yi could now clearly feel the power of the soul flowing in his body. It was precisely because of the existence of his soul that his strength had increased tremendously. His soul power was already far beyond that of cultivators in the same realm, reaching the standard of a true lake-stage cultivator. Was this the reason why his strength had skyrocketed? Lu Yi slowly came to his senses. So, the current him was equivalent to a spirit? An existence like it? Wasn't this an out-of-body experience? But it was not the same as a normal out-of-body experience. In a normal out-of-body experience, the cultivator could only use the power of the soul. There was no way to use spirit power. But now, he was in a state where both spirit power and soul power coexisted, which was very strange. He suddenly remembered that when he entered here, he felt as if he had broken free from his shackles. Now, it seemed that the shackles came from his body. The cultivation of his soul was much higher than the cultivation of his body. So, after his soul left his body, he felt as if he had broken free from his shackles and became stronger. This mirage was completely different from the ones he had entered before. In the past, the mirage was equivalent to a projection. Whatever state Lu Yi was in, the projection would be in the same state. Everything that Lu Yi carried with him, including his storage bag and storage space, would be projected into the mirage. The mirage realm before him was not just a projection. On the basis of the projection, his entire divine soul was drawn over. Lu Yi suddenly felt that something was wrong. In the mirage, his biggest advantage was that he was not afraid of death. Because even if he died, he would not lose much. At first, when his soul power was not strong enough, he would suffer for half a day after dying. But since he obtained a lot of soul-cleansing water to cleanse his soul and strengthen it, dying in the mirage was no longer a big deal to him. It was nothing more than the feeling of being pricked in the head by a needle. He just had to endure it. But if he was in a state similar to an out-of-body experience, once he died, Lu Yi could not tell what would happen to him. Would he die on the spot? Or would his soul be severely damaged? It seemed that he had to be careful. He could not die here easily. Otherwise, no one knew what bad consequences there would be. As for how to leave this place, Lu Yi had no clue at the moment. He could only explore slowly. He checked his body again. The Pan Mountain saber and the weapon box were at his waist. The storage bag and the storage space on the back of his hand could also be stored freely. Just as he thought before, this time, he was in an out-of-body experience based on a projection, so he could use the things around him at any time. In this state, the only advantage he had was that his strength had increased a lot. He was not in a hurry to push open the door and leave. He did not know the environment for the time being. At least, this room was safe. In the past, when he entered the mirage, he only needed to stand there, and a steady stream of monsters would rush out of the fog to sharpen his saber skills and combat skills. Although it was monotonous and boring, it was simple and clear. This time, the situation was much more complicated, so he needed to collect as many clues as possible to determine his current location and the dangers he might encounter. He walked toward the stairs on the side. As he stepped on the stairs, the wooden floor creaked, which was extremely ear-piercing in this quiet environment. Lu Yi could not help but have some doubts. Was this a mirage or not? He had always thought that the mirage was an illusion. Everything he saw in the mirage was fake, so even if he died in it, the loss would not be great. However, in the mirage this time, everything around him was so real that it did not give him the feeling that it was fake at all. He quickly walked down the dozen or so stairs. Lu Yi carefully poked his head out and looked at the second floor. Then he suddenly froze, because at this moment he met countless pairs of grayish-green eyes. Those eyes were all compound eyes. Lu Yi could almost see his own stunned expression in those pairs of eyes. The second floor of the room that he thought was safe was actually hiding more than 10 zergs. And they were the kind of zergs that he was very familiar with. They looked like praying mantises. He did not know how many praying mantises, including other types of zergs, he had killed in the Mirage before. How could there be zergs here? Before he could think deeply, the praying mantis zergs hiding on the second floor had already flapped their wings and flew toward the stairs. The leading zerg raised its boring knife high. The bright knife light flashed and the zerg was immediately cut in half. Dark green zerg blood splattered, and a pungent smell filled the air. Lu Yi stood at the stairs, the mountain pan saber at his waist already out of its sheath. After killing the first zerg, Lu Yi was slightly relieved. These praying mantis zergs were not too strong. They were still in the Cloud River realm. With his current strength, which was equivalent to the true lake realm, killing them was naturally not difficult. Moreover, the previous training in the Mirage allowed him to know the weakness of these zergs. The knife light was biting cold. Lu Yi guarded the stairs without taking a step back. All the praying mantis zergs that rushed over died one after another. In just a moment they were all killed. Dots of light floated out from the dead zergs. Unlike the dark red light that killed the Wanmo Ridge cultivators, these lights were golden. Killing zergs also gave merit points. While Lu Yi was surprised, he was even more certain that this was not an illusion. This was because he had killed so many zergs in the Mirage before, but he had never received any merit points. If he could receive merit points, this meant that the zergs he killed were all real. But why did killing zergs also give him merit points? Lu Yi was curious about how many merit points he could get by killing these zergs, so he checked his battlefield imprint. The battlefield imprint showed that he had more than 140,000 merit points. Lu Yi did not carefully record the specific number of merit points he had before, so it was difficult for him to determine the standard of merit points for killing zergs. Just as he was about to record the current number of merit points and compare it later, he suddenly noticed a change that puzzled him. The battlefield imprint recorded his information. In the column of merit points, the number showed 576. This number was obviously wrong because in Lu Ye's impression, he only had 56 merit points. This number had not changed for a long time. After all, for a Cloud River realm cultivator like him, there were not many opportunities to come into contact with merit points. So far, there had only been one. It was that time in the realm of beasts. Chapter 645. In the cultivation world of the 9 prefectures, merit points and battle achievements were only displayed in the form of numbers on a cultivator's battlefield imprint. However, they could allow cultivators to obtain a lot of material wealth. No matter which one it was, they were both extremely important to cultivators. There were roughly 3 ways to earn merit points. The first was through killing enemies, the second was through selling items in the Destiny Treasury, and the third was when one was in the Spirit Stream tier and received rewards from the garrison. There were no other ways to earn merit points. However, there were many other ways to obtain merit points. For example, in the secret realm of the realm of beasts, Lu Yi did not obtain much merit points just by killing enemies. However, he had led Pang Dehai and the others to resolve the source of the realm of beasts crisis. This had allowed him to obtain a lot of merit points. Thus, merit points could not only be obtained by killing enemies. They could also be obtained by completing certain tasks. Furthermore, the amount of merit points obtained was much greater than just killing enemies. In comparison, merit points were undoubtedly more important. This was because merit points could be used to purchase spirit lots. Merit points could not be used. The only way to exchange merit points for spirit lots was to participate in spirit lot auctions. This was also the reason why many cultivators at the Cloud River realm liked to participate in various secret realms in the Cloud River battlefield. The Spirit Stream battlefield had many inheritances, while the Cloud River battlefield had many secret realms. The former allowed cultivators to obtain a stronger foundation, while the latter allowed cultivators to grow faster. In this way, powerful cultivators could be born generation after generation in the cultivation world of the 9 prefectures. Since entering the Cloud River battlefield, Lu Yi had only entered the secret realm of the realm of beasts. Firstly, he had only entered the Cloud River battlefield for a short period of time. Secondly, he had not been to many places. Furthermore, some secret realms required a specific time to open. However, this did not mean that there were few secret realms in the Cloud River battlefield. If cultivators really wanted to explore secret realms, they would have the opportunity to do so once a month. There were many secret realms that gave merit points. In this way, cultivators could obtain merit points through their actions in these secret realms and exchange them for spirit lots. Although this was a bit difficult and dangerous, it was better than waiting for the heavenly spirit lot or cultivating in some low-quality spirit lands. Lu Yi had obtained many merit points in the secret realm of the realm of beasts. After exchanging them for spirit lots, he only had 56 merit points left. Since then, there had not been any changes. Now, his 56 points had become 576 points. In other words, he had gained 520 points. This was something that could be exchanged for 2 or 3 white spiritual sticks. Lu Yi immediately understood that the insectoids he killed were not merit points, but battle achievements. This made him overjoyed. Comparatively speaking, merit points were undoubtedly more useful. Moreover, he didn't lack merit points at the moment. After some calculations, the comparison between the number of merit points and the strength of the insectoids was not much different from merit points. For example, killing a 5th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator would give Lu Yi 40 merit points. Then, killing a 5th-order Cloud River Realm insect race cultivator would give him 40 merit points. Thus, the dozen or so Cloud River Tier Bug Tribe cultivators had only contributed 520 contribution points to him. While he was excited, he also became more vigilant. This was because anything that involved battle merits would not be simple. The cultivators of the Cloud River battlefield had concluded that mystic realms with battle merits were much more dangerous than other mystic realms. Although Lu Yi did not enter a mystic realm this time, but the Mirage realm, from the clues revealed everywhere, this Mirage realm was not a good place. Even if he had the strength of a true Lake Realm cultivator, he could not guarantee his own safety. Putting away the distracting thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi remained vigilant. The entire floor of the second floor was covered with scattered insect corpses. Green blood dyed the floor green, and there was a pungent smell in the air. There was a bed that looked like a resting place, but like the first floor, there was no one. From the dust piled up in the corner, it seemed that no one had lived here for a long time. Although encountering insectoids in the Mirage realm was a common thing, Lu Yi had no clue where this place was. The second floor was not big, and with a glance, it was basically clear. There was a wooden window that was wide open. The insectoids must have flown in through this window. Just as Lu Yi was about to move to close the window, there was a sudden bang. The light in the room dimmed, and a calf-like figure climbed up the wooden window. Its triangular head poked in through the window, and its 2 gray-green compound eyes reflected Lu Yi's figure. Another mantis insectoid had come, and this insectoid gave Lu Yi a feeling that it was much more dangerous than the ones he had killed before. It could be a coincidence, or it could be that the aura he had released just now had attracted it. The moment it saw Lu Yi, the insectoid immediately rushed in through the window. Its 2 blades danced like a weapon cultivator proficient in blade arts, and it stirred up a storm of slaughter in the not-so-spacious room. Lu Yi raised his mountain blade, and in a flash, he was already engaged in battle with the insectoid. Ding-ding-dang-dang-dang sounds could be heard, and the surging spirit chi turned the room into a mess. Lu Yi was still a little unfamiliar with suddenly gaining strength comparable to a true lake-stage cultivator. After all, he was only a 5th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, so before he could fully familiarize himself with his strength, he could not display his full strength. This insectoid that suddenly appeared was indeed much stronger than the ones before. At the very least, the blades it wielded were incomparably hard, and could actually block the mountain blade's slash. This was definitely a true lake-stage insectoid. Lu Yi was very curious. If he killed this insectoid, would the merit be calculated according to his current true lake-stage cultivation, or according to his 5th-order Cloud River Realm cultivation? If it was the latter, then the benefits this insectoid could bring him would be quite impressive. In the calculation of merit, a true lake stage cultivator's merit was 100 points, and every minor level of cultivation increased by 100 points. In other words, a first-order true lake stage cultivator's merit was 100 points, a second-order true lake stage cultivator's merit was 200 points, and a ninth-order true lake stage cultivator's merit was 900 points. If a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator killed a first-order true lake stage cultivator, crossing 5 minor levels, then the merit would be 6 times the basic merit, which was 600 points. It was the same for the corresponding merit. 600 merit could be exchanged for a green spirit tag, and this was calculated according to a first-order true lake stage cultivator's strength. The insectoid in front of him was most likely not just a first-order true lake stage cultivator. The stronger it was, the greater the benefits he could obtain from killing it, and it was the kind that increased exponentially. All these thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind in an instant and disappeared in an instant. Lu Ye didn't think too much about it, and his body nimbly moved around the room, blocking the opponent's storm-like slashes. The rapid exchange of blows in the narrow space allowed him to control his current state more and more skillfully. Seizing the moment when the insectoid raised his blade, Lu Ye activated his wind travel buff, and his body moved like a lightning bolt, rushing forward to within 3 meters of the insectoid. Light flashed on the Panshan blade, and extremely complicated patterns appeared on the pitch-black blade. Double-peak sharp spirit to-do. The sharp blade fell straight towards Lu Ye's back, but it only grazed his body and stabbed into empty air. With a poochie sound, the mountain blade pierced the mantis chest. The moment the sharp spirit mark was activated, the insectoid's body shook violently, and a short hiss came from its mouth. The other blade slashed down, and Lu Ye hurriedly retreated. The mountain blade brought out a pungent green blood that spilled onto the floor. The heavily injured mantis body swayed from side to side, and it instinctively waved its 2 blades. With a rumbling sound, the wall of the second floor was broken, and broken pieces of wood fell from the sky, causing dust and smoke to rise. When the dust settled, the mantis was already dead. However, Lu Ye wasn't in the mood to check the changes in his merit, and he just stared blankly at the distant sky. The sky seemed to have split open, and a huge gap appeared. Inside the gap, there seemed to be another world. At this moment, a large number of insectoids were swarming out of the gap, and they were pouring into this world. These insectoids were of different shapes and sizes. Lu Ye had seen many of them in the Mirage Realm, but there were also many that he had never seen before. They were like cats that had smelled the scent of fish. They swarmed into this place from an unknown space. Lu Ye didn't observe for too long. He just took a quick glance and withdrew his gaze, hiding the shock and confusion in his heart, and his expression turned solemn. He had been in the house all this time, and he didn't know what was going on outside. However, after his battle with the true Lake Realm mantis caused the wall of the second floor to shatter, the situation outside was imprinted in his eyes. As far as his eyes could see, there was a street, and on both sides of the street were rows of familiar-looking houses. Many of the houses had collapsed, and on the street, among the broken walls, there were many insectoids of all shapes and sizes, flying and crawling, and there were countless of them. The sudden commotion here had obviously alarmed these insectoids. When Lu Ye saw them, they also saw Lu Ye. The sound of wings flapping rang out, and insectoids with wings spread out flew. There were also insectoids that looked like hunting dogs, but their bodies were covered in carapace, and they had slender tails behind their backs. They had sharp fangs in their mouths, and their bodies were strong and vigorous, and they rushed over at an extremely fast speed. The situation was not good. When he first appeared in this house, he thought that this place was very safe, but when he went up to the second floor, he realized that there were some hidden dangers in the safety. At this moment, he finally saw the truth. The safety he thought did not exist at all. There were all kinds of insectoids in all directions, and he didn't notice it before. Firstly, these insectoids didn't move much, and secondly, he came here through a projection and an out-of-body experience, so his senses had not recovered. Therefore, he didn't notice the insectoids outside, and even the insectoids on the second floor. Chapter 646. Rustling sounds could be heard as a large number of insectoids rushed over. It was too late for him to activate his concealment and aura concealment spirit runes, so Lu Yi immediately flew up and prepared to escape to the side. However, he had only flown less than 30 meters when he suddenly felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him, making him unable to fly any higher. Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the return to Heaven Valley Spirit Land, he had used the Flight Restriction Grand Formation to deal with the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators many times, causing them to be injured repeatedly. He didn't expect that he would be suppressed by the Flight Restriction Grand Formation today. This was really karma, retribution. Although he didn't know where he was, there was clearly a flight restriction formation here. Flying 100 feet was the limit, and he couldn't fly any higher. After a slight delay, the insectoids got closer to him, and the sound of their mouths and wings flapping constantly entered his ears. Lu Yi had already rushed out of the second floor and was flying in a certain direction. As he looked around, that inexplicable sense of familiarity surfaced in his heart again. This place seemed to be a city. Although he couldn't see too far away, he could still see neatly planned streets. On both sides of the streets, there were houses. Many of the houses had been destroyed by the insectoids and were reduced to rubble. There were also some that were still intact. The house he had appeared in was clearly one of them. At first, he thought it was a safe place, but it turned out not to be. As if a handful of salt had been sprinkled into a pot of oil, when Lu Ye's figure appeared, the insectoids in the large area boiled over. They surrounded Lu Yi from all directions, and there was no lack of existences with powerful auras among them. The mountain pan saber ignited with a fiery red light, and Lu Yi pushed his perception to the limit. He tried his best to avoid the powerful existences and cut a bloody path out of the encirclement. Saber light constantly flashed, and the insectoids in front of him spilled green blood as their vitality dissipated. Everywhere he passed, a rain of blood was stirred up. While fleeing, Lu Yi also discovered some strange things. For example, his perception was much stronger and more detailed than before. In the past, he could only sense some vague things around him, and the range was only about 100 feet. But now, when he activated his perception, the range of his perception had suddenly expanded to several dozen meters. Moreover, the perception was no longer vague, and a lot of feedback from the outside world appeared clearly in his mind. This change should be related to the way his soul left his body. In the past, he was restrained by his physical body, so even though his soul was powerful, he couldn't exert all of his strength. Now that there was no such restriction, the power of his divine spirit could be fully displayed. His perception became more detailed, and many feedbacks appeared in his mind. There were already signs of divine consciousness. Other than that, the spirit runes he constructed seemed to be different from usual. However, Lu Yi did not have the time to think about these things. He could only suppress the doubts in his heart. There were many insectoids in this city, and almost every corner was filled with insectoids of various forms and strengths. Lu Yi might have been able to escape for a while, but he could not keep running forever. As time passed, his situation became worse and worse. The powerful insectoids that he had evaded were still chasing after him, looking like they wanted to kill him. As a result, the further he ran, the more powerful insectoids there would be in his pursuit. If it was in the previous Mirage realm, Lu Yi would not be too worried. At worst, he would die and come back the next time. But now, Lu Yi had no clue what was going on in this Mirage realm. Who knew if he would really die here? So even if there was a slight possibility, Lu Yi did not dare to relax. While running, a pink, conical insectoid suddenly appeared in the sky in front of him. The insectoid was round and had 4 legs. At first glance, it looked like a bald, fat man. This insectoid had no wings, and Lu Yi did not know how it could fly, but this pink insectoid gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. The moment it appeared in his field of vision, Lu Ye's heart was alarmed. Lu Yi immediately wanted to change his direction, but it was too late. The insectoid opened its mouth and spat out a crystal-clear thread. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a large net that covered a large area. Lu Yi couldn't avoid it for a moment and was caught in the net. His whole body uncontrollably fell to the ground. This net that appeared out of nowhere did not only have the effect of binding, Lu Yi could clearly feel the talent tree in his body acting strangely. He did not have the time to investigate, but when the talent tree acted strangely, it usually meant that he had been poisoned. In other words, the silk of this net was highly poisonous. If it were any other true lake stage cultivator, even if they could escape from the net, the poison would be enough to make them immobile or even kill them. But poison had never been effective on Lu Yi. Before he landed on the ground, a sharp blade light spread out in all directions. Lu Yi had already escaped from the net. He hurriedly stabilized his body and continued to escape. But at this moment, dense shadows covered the sky above him. It was the insectoids that were chasing after him. This momentary delay had already caused him to fall into an extremely passive situation. Insectoids surrounded him so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. I can't escape. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Yi had already charged towards a direction with his blade in hand, engaging in battle with the insectoids in that direction. His short life as a fugitive made him understand that in this strange environment, no place was safe. No matter where he fled to, there would be insectoids chasing after him. So if he wanted to survive, there was only one way, and that was to kill all the insectoids in his field of vision. Only then would he have a chance to catch his breath. But there was no doubt that this was very difficult. The insectoids that surrounded him were all true lake stage cultivators. There were at least a few dozen of them. Among them, the chubby insectoid gave him the feeling that it was the most dangerous. And if they fought, it was hard to say whether it would attract more insectoids. Based on his previous observations, this was very likely to happen. But Lu Yi could not just sit and wait for death. He could not test the consequences of dying here. So he only had one choice. In the past, no matter how dangerous the situation was, he always had Hu Pe and Yi by his side. But this time, he was truly alone. Hu Pe wasn't around, so he couldn't rely on any external help. Although his strength had broken free from the shackles of his physical body and reached the level of true lake stage, the enemies he faced were also much stronger. This time, things did not bode well for him. In the great battle, insectoids were constantly being killed. Lu Ye's figure moved freely in the battlefield, the blade lights of his mountain pan blade crisscrossing. Although there were many grievances between him and Xia Liang, at this moment, Lu Yi was very grateful to him. This was because Xia Liang had taught him the Heart's Eye secret technique in the immortal Fox Valley. In a one-on-one fight, the effect of the Heart's Eye secret technique wasn't very obvious, but in this kind of situation where he was fighting against many enemies, the effect of the Heart's Eye secret technique was too strong. Many times, Lu Yi relied on the Heart's Eye secret technique to block one fatal attack after another. But to no avail. Although insectoids were constantly being killed by Lu Yi, the remaining insectoids were not afraid at all. They continued to attack him without fear of death. Lu Yi's body was constantly being covered in wounds. No blood flowed out, but the effects of his injuries were no different from normal. Many of his injuries made him feel pain and accelerated his exhaustion. As time passed, the battlefield was filled with insectoids' broken limbs. Lu Ye's attacks gradually weakened. He was reaching his limit. He could not help but think of the problem that had been bothering him. If he died here, would he really die? If he did, then Yi and Hu Pe would not be able to survive. Hu Pe had formed a life origin technique with him and their lives were intertwined. Yi and Hu Pe had a relationship of being born together. It could be said that the lives of a man, a tiger, and a spirit were intertwined. He felt sorry for the two of them. When he saw the second door, Lu Yi knew that the world behind the door was abnormally dangerous. But based on his previous experience, he still had the confidence that he would not really die if he died in the Mirage world. That was why he pushed the door open and entered. However, what he thought he was relying on was ultimately just a preconceived notion, and the result was his current situation. A huge impact came from the front. Lu Yi was sent flying by an insectoid the size of a hound. At that moment, Lu Ye's vision became somewhat blurry. It was also at this moment that a red light flashed in his vision. That fleeting glimpse of the red light gave Lu Yi a strange sense of familiarity once again. At the moment of life and death, time seemed to stop flowing. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind like lightning. At that moment, he actually remembered what that sense of familiarity was. That fleeting red light. He had seen it before. Impossible, right? How could it be? If things were really as he thought, then it would be too inconceivable. But regardless of whether things were really as he thought, he had to verify it. If that was really the case, then he might have a chance to survive. When Lu Ye's figure flew into the air, many insectoids rushed over from all directions, but what greeted them was a fiery red crescent-shaped slash. The power of this slash was stronger than ever before. It was the strongest slash Lu Yi had ever unleashed since he started cultivating. Several insectoids were torn apart on the spot, and even more were sent flying. Lu Yi landed on the ground and immediately cast Windwalk on his legs, charging in the direction he had seen the red light just now. A dozen breaths later, Lu Yi dragged his wounded body out of the encirclement. Looking up, he saw a red lantern hanging in front of a building not too far away. The red light he had seen was the color of the lantern's light. Chapter 647. The dilapidated city was littered with broken fences and dilapidated walls. Many places had been reduced to ruins, but amidst these ruins, one could still vaguely see the city's former glory. There weren't many buildings with red lanterns hanging at the entrance. At this moment, this building was Lu Ye's last hope. If everything was as he thought, then he might still have a chance to live. But if he was wrong, then he could only wait for death. On the brink of life and death, Lu Yi burst forth with unprecedented speed, killing his way out of the encirclement of the insectoids and rushing towards the building. The insectoids chased after him relentlessly, and the chubby one was the most ferocious of them all. The distance of a few hundred feet was covered in the blink of an eye. Lu Yi rushed into the building and immediately closed the door. Just as he did this, a rumbling sound came from outside. It was the insectoids that were still alive. They attacked the building in a frenzy, their violent strength wreaking havoc, causing the wooden planks to creak. Then, something strange happened. No matter how these insectoids with strength comparable to true lake stage attacked, even if the entire building shook and the wooden planks creaked, the building was not damaged at all. It was as if there was an invisible force protecting this building, preventing it from ever being damaged. Lu Yi was still holding the door, afraid that the insectoids would rush in. But after sensing the unique nature of this building, he let go of his hands and slowly retreated. Logically speaking, without him holding the door, the insectoids outside could easily break through the door and rush in. But in reality, even though the two doors were violently attacked, there were no signs of them being opened. He could hear the angry screams of the insectoids, as well as the sounds of nearby buildings collapsing. Only the building he was in was impregnable. Lu Yi let out a long sigh of relief. His nervous mood relaxed, but his heart was filled with even more questions. The situation was as he thought. If that was the case, was this really that place? But why did he enter this place? Outside the building, the insectoids attacked fiercely for a long time before slowly dispersing. The insectoids' intelligence was ultimately a flaw. It could even be said that the insectoids did not have much intelligence. They mostly acted on instinct. Lu Yi hid in this indestructible building. They couldn't see or smell the enemy, so they quickly forgot about Lu. Inside the house, Lu Yi sensed the powerful auras around him leaving one by one. Only when all of the insectoids had disappeared did he truly relax. Endless tiredness swept over him, making him drowsy. The wounds on his body also transmitted more unbearable pain than normal. This was an experience he had never experienced in the mirage before. According to his speculation, his current state was a projection of his soul. The battle just now had consumed a lot of his energy, and he didn't know if he could recover by swallowing a panacea. He would know once he tried it. Lu Yi took out some spirit pills from his storage space and stuffed them into his mouth, silently refining them. To his surprise, it was actually effective. As he refined the medicinal effects of the spirit pill, the energy in his body was slowly recovering. He immediately sat down cross-legged. As he recovered, he thought about the current situation. Through some observations during the escape as well as the verification of rushing into this building at the end, Lu Yi could basically confirm that this place was a secret realm that he had been to before. Immortal Origin City. Immortal Origin City was a secret realm that appeared in the Spirit Stream battlefield. When he first entered this place, he was only an 8th order spirit stream realm cultivator. It had been a year or two since then. Although a long time had passed, the memory of this place was still fresh in his mind. Because it was here that he had obtained several bottles of soul-cleansing water, which had strengthened his soul. It could even be said that the benefits he obtained from the 100 Formation Pagoda were directly related to the soul-cleansing water. Moreover, the various experiences in Immortal Origin City were unforgettable for Lu Yi. When he first entered this place, he was alone, but with Hu Po's ability to transform frustrated spirits, he was like a fish in water here. The gambling addict Lu Sanbao, the wailing Peepa girl, the scholar who liked to be praised but was actually not talented, the butcher who held a boning knife, the blind fortune teller who claimed to be unparalleled in divination but was actually a muscle-bound blind fortune teller, all of them had become Hu Po's frustrated spirits. It was by relying on these special frustrated spirits that Lu Yi was able to change the outcome of the confrontation between the cultivators of the two camps. At that time, almost all of the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who entered here were killed, and in the end, only a few fish escaped the net and survived. When he first entered Immortal Origin City, Lu Yi didn't think much about it. He only thought that this was a secret realm to hone himself, and he also obtained a lot of benefits in this secret realm. But now, it seemed that this place was not just a secret realm. It seemed that there were other secrets hidden. This made him think of the woman in red sitting on the swing and the city lord of Immortal Origin City. At that time, Lu Yi only felt that these two were existences that spirit stream realm cultivators absolutely could not compete with. It was really puzzling that they appeared in a secret realm where spirit stream realm cultivators were training. Fortunately, these two did not have much malice towards the cultivators who came in to train. Otherwise, none of the cultivators at that time would have the power to resist. The second Mirage realm was actually connected to Immortal Origin City, which made Lu Yi very puzzled. He couldn't understand why. The reason why he judged this place to be Immortal Origin City was that on the way to escape, he had a lot of familiar feelings. After all, he had been to this place before, so he naturally felt familiar with it. The second reason, which was also the main reason, was the building with the red lanterns hanging at the door. When he first entered the secret realm of Immortal Origin City, the enemies of the cultivators were the Immortal Origin guards scattered in the city, apart from the cultivators of the enemy camp. The strength of these Immortal Origin guards was not ordinary, especially the captains. Each of them was extremely powerful. To Immortal Origin City, cultivators were foreign invaders. Once the patrolling Immortal Origin guards found traces of cultivators, they would immediately take action, capture the cultivators, and imprison them in the dungeon. Generally, those who were imprisoned in the dungeon did not have a good ending. Few cultivators could escape the pursuit of the Immortal Origin guards. However, cultivators could hide in the buildings with the red lanterns hanging at the door because the Immortal Origin guards could not enter these buildings with the red lanterns hanging at the door. Lu Yi had done this before. He was chased to a corner by the Immortal Origin guards, and then hid in a building to escape the pursuit of the Immortal Origin guards. In the end, he met the gambling addict Lu Sanbao in that building. That was also the first frustrated spirit that Hu Po had subdued here. History was always surprisingly similar. The first time he came to Immortal Origin City, Lu Yi used this special building to escape the pursuit of the Immortal Origin guards. Now, the second time he came here, he also used this special building to escape the pursuit of the insect race. These special buildings seemed to be endowed with a special protective power. They could not be destroyed and could not be damaged, allowing cultivators in danger to have a safe harbor. Of course, judging this place to be Immortal Origin City was somewhat arbitrary, but Lu Yi felt that it was not far from the truth. This was most likely Immortal Origin City. Not to mention why the second stage of the Mirage realm was connected to Immortal Origin City, the current situation showed that Immortal Origin City had obviously been occupied by the insect race. Thinking about it, although the Immortal Origin guards in Immortal Origin City were not bad, they were only equivalent to the Spirit Stream realm. After Lu Yi entered, although there were Spirit Stream realm insects, there were also Cloud River realm insects and True Lake realm insects. He did not encounter any Spirit Ocean realm insects, but Lu Yi recalled the huge gap in the sky that he saw previously. Spirit ocean realm insects might exist, but he was lucky not to encounter them. How could the immortal origin guards resist such an insect race with their strength? Perhaps even the woman in red and the city lord, who seemed unfathomable back then, would not be able to withstand it. Spirit bodies could also die. Thinking of Lu Sanbao and the other spirit bodies, Lu Yi felt sad. No matter what, those guys had provided him with great help, but now they were probably gone. Although he inexplicably came to Immortal Origin City again, and the situation was extremely dangerous, this was a rare opportunity. There was a soul cleansing pool here. There was soul cleansing water in the soul cleansing pool. That was a treasure that even spirit ocean realm cultivators coveted. Except in secret realms like Immortal Origin City, there was no other way to obtain it. Even the Tianji treasure house did not sell it. Lu Yi obtained a lot of soul cleansing water from here last time, and he used a lot of it himself, making his soul far superior to cultivators of the same realm. He shared some of it, and now there was only half a bottle left. But who would complain about having too many of such treasures? However, to get soul cleansing water, one must first go to the soul cleansing pool, which was in the direction of the City Lord Mansion, in the center of Immortal Origin City. Lu Yi did not know if he could do it with his current strength, but since the opportunity was in front of him, he had to give it a try. If he succeeded, he would be rich. The reason why he could not get more soul cleansing water was that time was limited. The City Lord of Immortal Origin City only gave him a little time. Now that the City Lord was most likely gone, as long as he could reach the soul cleansing pool, he could take as much as he wanted. There were no more restrictions, and he might be able to take the entire soul cleansing pool. Thinking of this, Lu Ye's mind was burning. Although this matter was somewhat inexplicable, it might be a blessing in disguise. Many thoughts kept rolling in his mind, and Lu Yi continued to recuperate. However, to his surprise, no matter how many spirit pills he swallowed, the feeling of exhaustion lingered, and the wounds on his body showed no signs of healing. After thinking about it, Lu Yi understood. Right now, he was in a kind of out-of-body state, so strictly speaking, he was a spirit body. Although he didn't know why he could take spirit pills to replenish his spirit power, the spirit power he had consumed in the previous battle couldn't be replenished in a short period of time. In particular, there were many injuries on his body. These were injuries on his spirit body, and had nothing to do with the strength of his physical body. Therefore, swallowing spirit pills had no effect on the recovery of his injuries and spirit. Chapter 648. The injuries of a spirit body could not be healed by normal means. It would probably take a long time to recuperate, but the exact amount of time was uncertain. Although it was safe to hide here, Lu Yi could not really stay here for too long. After some thought, he took out a jade bottle from his storage space. Inside the bottle was the last remaining half of his bottle of soul-cleansing water. There were less than 10 drops left. He had originally kept this for emergency use, but in this situation he couldn't care less about it. Opening the bottle, the unique fragrance of the soul-cleansing water wafted out. Smelling it, Lu Yi felt refreshed, and even the fatigue that troubled him seemed to have dissipated. This made him even more certain that the soul-cleansing water was the best medicine for his current condition. He did not dare to consume too much, only taking 1 drop. A warm feeling instantly spread throughout his body, and the fatigue in his body and mind dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the injuries on his body were rapidly healing. Indeed, the soul-cleansing water was extremely effective in healing the injuries of a spirit body. After resting for another 2 hours, Lu Yi finally got up when he was completely healed. Walking to the door, he peeked through the gap. Most of the insects that were chasing him previously had disappeared, and there were only a few wandering aimlessly on the streets. To the current him, they were not much of a threat. Since he was going to the City Lord Mansion, the most important thing now was to confirm his location. But before that, there were some things that Lu Yi wanted to confirm. Previously, when he was fighting with the insects, he felt something strange. But at that time, he was busy running for his life and did not have the time to verify it. Now that he had this special building to rely on, even if he encountered any danger, he could escape back here to hide. Therefore, Lu Yi wanted to know if the abnormalities he felt before were the same as what he thought. If they were, then perhaps he could use some techniques that he could not normally use. He took some time to check his battlefield imprint and found that the number of battle merits had increased to more than 3,000. Although this number was not little, it was not much either. One must know that he had killed many insects, and there was no lack of true lake stage ones. From the looks of it, the battle merits were calculated based on his current true lake stage strength. Therefore, even if he killed a true lake stage insect, the battle merits he would obtain wouldn't be much. This made Lu Yi a little disappointed. If the battle merits were calculated based on his 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivation, then the battle merits he could have obtained in the previous battle would have been several times higher. But on second thought, it was already an unexpected gain to be able to obtain merit points in this place. What was there to be dissatisfied about? Although more than 3,000 battle merits were not much, it was enough to exchange for 2 blue spirit lots. Moreover, this was just the beginning. If his plan could be carried out, he would definitely obtain more and more battle merits in the future. Perhaps after this time, he would be able to exchange for a lot of golden spirit lots, allowing his cultivation to rise again. Pushing open the door, Lu Yi immediately constructed the concealment and aura-concealing spirit runes to conceal himself. The commotion alerted the few insectoids, but they didn't notice anything when they turned around. They didn't pay any more attention to the commotion and continued to wander around. The insectoids had all kinds of strange shapes. Some insectoids had the same form as monster beasts. At first glance, they looked no different from monster beasts, but in fact, they weren't monster beasts at all. There were also some insectoids that had a unique form that completely defied common sense. But without exception, all insectoids had one thing in common, and that was that their bodies were covered with thick carapaces and their blood was green in color. The stronger the insectoid, the stronger the protection provided by its carapace. Therefore, killing insectoids was a technical job. One had to attack the areas without carapace as much as possible in order to cause effective damage. Lu Yi had honed his skills many times in the Mirage, so he knew the weaknesses of various types of insectoids like the back of his hand. His target this time was an insectoid that looked like a centipede. Its back was covered with dense white carapaces that looked like white bones. More than 100 pairs of legs crawled around, emitting a dense sound. What Lu Yi wanted to verify wasn't complicated, but in order to ensure the results were accurate, he didn't attack the insectoid immediately. Instead, he waited quietly. After a long while, the centipede finally calmed down and quietly coiled up in the ruins of a building, motionless. Lu Yi quietly approached until he was only 3 feet away from the insectoid before he stopped. The quiet atmosphere was suddenly broken. The moment Lu Yi's energy surged, the centipede insectoid realized that something was wrong. But before it could react, the space in front of Lu Yi suddenly distorted. An arrow-like object flashed by and viciously slammed into the centipede's head, disappearing in an instant. In that instant, the centipede insectoid seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Its 10-meter-long body rolled and twisted violently as a mournful hiss came from its mouth. Lu Yi's figure appeared. The mountain pan saber was already out of its sheath. Taking advantage of the insectoid's struggle, the saber slashed down. Green blood spurted out and a huge head flew up. A true lake stage insectoid died just like that. Lu Yi's expression was calm, but his eyes were filled with joy. This was because he realized that what he felt previously wasn't an illusion. It was real. Previously, when he was escaping and fighting with the insectoids, he had imbued his mountain pan saber with the sharpness spirit rune. At that time, he had a strange feeling because the sharpness spirit rune was different from usual. In the past, the sharpness spirit rune needed to be imbued on a spirit weapon to make it sharper. Of course, it could also be imbued on other places. But no matter what, it needed a carrier to be effective. But the sharpness spirit rune used in the Immortal Essence City didn't seem to need a carrier. At that time, Lu Yi realized something. This spirit rune was imbued with spiritual energy, which meant that it was a pure spirit rune. But the power he was imbuing now wasn't just spiritual energy, it was also the power of his soul, and a spirit rune imbued with the power of his soul was a god rune. Therefore, The sharpness spirit rune didn't need a carrier because a god rune imbued with the power of his soul was a killing technique. That was what Lu Yi wanted to verify. Reality proved that his intuition wasn't wrong. In this environment, the god rune he imbued with the power of his soul was indeed a god rune that could kill his enemies directly. The arrow-like thing that flashed by just now was the manifestation of the sharpness spirit rune. Moreover, compared to the slash of the mountain pan saber, this kind of god rune was especially fierce against the insectoids. Fundamentally speaking, this was a god rune attack. The insectoids' biggest weakness was their low intelligence, so they didn't have much defense against this kind of god rune attack. When the arrow formed by the sharpness spirit rune crashed into the insectoid's brain, it had already caused great damage to its already weak intelligence. This kind of sudden attack was as if the insectoid's soul was being torn apart. The insectoid's body was covered with a thick carapace. In the face of this kind of invisible attack, there was no way it could provide any protection. Under normal circumstances, even if Lu Yi could kill this insectoid, it would take some effort. But with the help of the sharpness spirit rune, he killed it with a single slash. After verifying his idea, Lu Yi was excited. In such an environment and in such a place, the god rune attack could definitely have an unexpected effect. If he had known this earlier, he might not have been in such a difficult situation. But before this kind of thing was verified, how could he act rashly? At that time, he was busy running for his life. Any negligence could lead to eternal damnation. After all, he was just a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Even if he had the strength of a true Lake Realm cultivator now, he was still far from being able to use the power of his soul. That was a method that could only be used by Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. But in this specific environment, Lu Yi had mastered the capital that only Spirit Sea Realm cultivators could use. He couldn't help but think of what Madame Yun had said before. Although battle rune masters were difficult to deal with before reaching the Spirit Sea Realm, it was more reflected in the variety of fighting styles. In the process of fighting, battle rune masters could activate various spirit runes of different natures to make their opponents feel the dangers of the world. After reaching the Spirit Sea Realm, battle rune masters were not only difficult to deal with. In many cases, their opponents might not even know how they died. In short, after reaching the Spirit Sea Realm, an excellent battle rune master could exert far more strength and deterrence than ordinary Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. The reason was that battle rune masters could activate divine runes after reaching the Spirit Sea Realm, which could turn into various kinds of soul attacks. Other Spirit Sea Realm cultivators had such means, but how could they compare with battle rune masters? The sharpness divine glyph that was activated with the power of his god's soul displayed great lethality. The abnormality here also alerted the other insectoids that were wandering nearby, and they all gathered here. Lu Yi raised his mountain blade and charged towards the nearest insectoid. As he charged forward, the divine rune of sharpness activated once more. Space distorted as the arrow-like object flashed once more. Before the insectoid could even get close to Lu Yi, it suddenly collapsed to the ground, shrieking incessantly. When Lu Yi rushed to it, it didn't realize the danger at all. With a sweep of his mountain saber, another insect was killed. Not all spiritual inscriptions were suitable to be activated by the power of the divine soul. For example, the sharp defense could be used. One could be used as a divine soul attack, while the other could be used as a divine soul barrier to block the divine soul attack of others. However, spirit runes like Sunshine, Bloodstain, and Wind Travel had no special effect even when activated by soul power. However, spirit runes like Heavy Pressure, Spike, and Slash could all be turned into divine runes, which had different effects. Heavy Pressure could give the insect an illusion that its consciousness couldn't bear the weight. Spike was similar to Sharpness, which could cause great damage to the insect's soul. Mirage divine runes didn't cause any damage, but they could make the insect fall into some illusions for a short time. On the street, Lu Yi kept using all kinds of divine runes to test their effects. One insect after another was killed. To be continued. Chapter 649. A moment later, Lu Yi returned to the special building. It wasn't that the insectoids had all been killed, but that more and more insectoids had gathered, making Lu Yi feel somewhat threatened. In order to avoid any accidents, he had to hide. With his thoughts confirmed, Lu Ye's mood was undoubtedly lifted. However, he soon discovered that things weren't as simple as he thought. That was because that short battle actually made him feel a little weak. This kind of weakness was not the same as the weakness caused by his previous injuries. It was more like a burden brought about by excessive consumption. He immediately understood that although the environment and his special state allowed him to use methods that only Divine Sea Realm cultivators could use in advance, in the end, the foundation of his soul was still too weak. Indeed, compared to cultivators in the same realm, his soul was extremely powerful, but it still wasn't enough to support him for a long time to construct divine runes to kill enemies. In this environment, with his current state, he could take spirit pills to replenish his spirit energy, but if his soul was seriously exhausted or injured, he would have to use soul-cleansing water. He had a limited amount of soul-cleansing water on hand, and he had already taken a drop before, so unless it was absolutely necessary, Lu Yi didn't want to continue using it. In this way, this effective method of killing insectoids couldn't be used frequently, otherwise, once he ran out of soul-cleansing water, there would be nothing left to play with. He couldn't help but feel slight regret in his heart, because in that short moment earlier, he'd obtained almost 2,000 battle merits. If he was able to utilize divine crests without restraint, then the speed at which he obtained battle merits would surely attain an extremely terrifying speed. Outside, there was the sound of insectoids banging on the door and windows. Lu Yi didn't panic. This kind of building with a lantern hanging at the door was protected by a mysterious power, so no matter what, it couldn't be destroyed. As for where this mysterious power came from, Lu Yi had an answer in his heart. The noise outside gradually quieted down after a while. The insectoid's intelligence was like this. Even if they saw Lu Yi rushing in with their own eyes, they couldn't find him for a long time and gradually forgot about him. When the time came, they would do what they were supposed to do. Lu Yi quietly recovered in the room. When it was completely quiet outside, he waited for a long time before going to the door and looking through the crack. The insectoid corpses on the street had already disappeared. Only the green blood that had been spilled all over the street was evidence of the battle that had just taken place. As for where the corpses of the dead insectoids went, naturally, they were devoured by the living insectoids. The insectoids would eat anything that had energy. Lu Yi had also experienced an insect tide in the spirit stream battlefield. Wherever those insects passed, all life was wiped out, not even a blade of grass was left behind. But then again, if there was the insect clan, it meant that there was an insect nest. Where was the insect nest in Immortal Essence City? Lu Yi immediately recalled the hole in the sky he had seen earlier, from which an endless stream of insectoids had fallen. The hive might be inside the gap. Under normal circumstances, the only way to deal with the insect clan was to destroy the hive first. Only then could the problem be solved from the root. However, the problem in Celestial Origin City was obviously beyond the scope of Lu Ye's ability. Therefore, when he realized the location of the hive, he did not have any other ideas. Not to mention other things, Celestial Origin City had a flight restriction array. At most, he could fly 10 feet into the air. The gap in the sky was at least a few hundred feet from the ground. No matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to fly up. There were still a few insectoids wandering on the street outside the door. Lu Yi blessed himself with concealment and aura concealment spirit runes. He quietly opened the door and walked out again. This time, his goal was not to kill insectoids. He wanted to find an insectoid that met his requirements. No matter why he entered Celestial Origin City, since he was already here, he could only think of ways to obtain some benefits. Soul-cleansing water, battle merits from killing insectoids, these were all benefits that ordinary cultivators would not be able to obtain. While there was danger, there was also a huge benefit. The divine runes could not be activated continuously. Otherwise, the consumption would be too great. Although Lu Yi had the blessing of concealment and aura concealment spirit runes and could move stealthily, it was still very difficult to pass through the insectoid blockade and head to the city lord's mansion. Moreover, in this state he could not kill insectoids to obtain battle merits. If he wanted to solve these problems, he could only take a risk. Whether it would work or not, Lu Yi was not sure, but he had to give it a try. Hiding his figure, he walked through one street after another, seeing one insectoid after another. Lu Yi gradually figured out his current location. He was probably at the outermost periphery of Celestial Origin City. The entire Celestial Origin City was still very large. When he first came in with the cultivation of 8th Order Spirit Stream Realm, he did not walk through the entire Celestial Origin City, so he was not sure how big it was. But right now, the center of Celestial Origin City should be in the direction of the gap in the sky. It was worth mentioning that there were not many insectoids at the gap in the sky now. It was possible that all the insectoids in the insectoid nest had been mobilized. The insectoid's intelligence was not high, but their corresponding abilities were difficult to estimate. Basically, every different type of insectoid had a special strength. Take the mantis insectoid race, which Lu Yi was most familiar with, as an example. Among all the insectoids he had seen, this was the most advanced type of insectoid in terms of combat skills. When the two blades were waved, it was like a real swordsman. The insectoid race, which looked like hunting dogs, had an extremely sensitive sense of smell. Even if Lu Yi now had the blessing of concealment and aura concealment spirit inscriptions, he was almost detected by this insectoid race several times. So now, as long as he encountered this insectoid race, he would stay far away. There was also an insectoid race that looked like a hedgehog, with sharp bone spikes all over its body. It had almost no weakness. Against such an insectoid race, Lu Yi felt that he had to use soul attacks to win. Otherwise, he would have no way to deal with it. In addition, the insectoid race that Lu Yi had encountered before was pink, round, and fat, like a pink silkworm. Its entire body was highly toxic, and even the silk it spat out was extremely poisonous. This insectoid race posed the least threat to Lu Yi. With his innate skill tree, he was the least afraid of poison. However, this insectoid race was not only highly toxic, but the silk it spat out could also turn into a large net, which had the effect of trapping the enemy. It was very troublesome. Along the way, Lu Yi also carefully noted down the buildings with lanterns hanging at the door as an escape route. Generally speaking, there were very few such buildings. Basically, there was only one for several streets. After searching for a total of 4 hours, Lu Yi finally found an insectoid race that barely met his requirements. It was not that he had not encountered any before, but most of them were gathered together with other insectoids, and Lu Yi could not use his own methods. Now, he finally met one that was alone. This insectoid race was not small. At first glance, it looked like an 8-clawed spider. Its back and abdomen were covered in a thick carapace for protection. Its ferocious mouthparts were like saw teeth, causing one to shudder at the sight of it. Although he had not fought with it, Lu Yi could still tell that it was a true lake-stage insectoid race. The reason why he chose it was mainly because of its large size and wide back. This way, after he concealed his body, he could sit on it safely. Of course, the premise was that his plan could be successfully implemented. If the situation was different from what he imagined, then his subsequent plans would not be able to be carried out. However, it should not be a big problem. The insectoid race's spiritual intelligence was a weakness. His methods might not be effective against cultivators of the same level, but it would definitely be effective against insectoids. He silently walked towards the arachnid race insectoid and stood still 2 feet in front of it. This distance was already very dangerous. Even if the arachnid race did not have a keen sense of smell, it could sense that something was wrong at such a close distance. However, before it could react, Lu Yi took the initiative to reveal himself. In that instant, Lu Ye's eyes met the arachnid race insectoid's compound eyes. Lu Ye's large hand pressed on the hilt of his mountain plate saber. His entire body surged with energy, ready to strike if the situation went south. The arachnid race insectoid's front legs were also raised high. The hairy front legs were extremely sturdy because they were covered in a white bone-like substance. In addition to its sharpness, the power of such a strike was not inferior to a true lake-stage cultivator's full-strength attack. A great battle seemed to be about to break out. However, The arachnid race insectoid's raised front legs froze in midair and did not land. Not only that, the moment it discovered Lu Yi, its mouthpart squirmed and made a hissing sound. Now, there was no sound at all. Its originally lively compound eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of dust at this moment, gradually darkening. On the contrary, Lu Ye's eyes became brighter than usual. If one looked carefully, they could even see that there were some extremely complicated lines in his eyes. The lines gathered and merged, forming a wonderful picture. Charm Divine Mark. It was different from spirit runes like Sharp Defense. If it was activated with spirit energy, it would be a spirit rune. If it was activated with spiritual energy, it would be a divine mark. However, Charm was a divine mark that could only be activated with spiritual energy. Lu Yi obtained this divine mark after killing the fox demon of the immortal Fox Valley and devouring its pillfire. He thought that it would be impossible for him to use this divine mark before he broke through to the Spirit Sea realm. He did not expect that he would enter the immortal Essence City in this special state again, allowing him to activate his spiritual energy. After verifying the changes of the Sharp Defense spirit runes, Lu Yi wanted to try the power of Charm. He already had a plan in mind with this divine mark as the core. In the immortal Fox Valley, the fox demon used its innate ability to control nearly 100 cultivators. There was no lack of 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators among them. The power of the Charm Divine Mark was somewhat similar to the fox demon's innate ability. It was able to confuse and control people's minds, but it was not as exaggerated as the fox demons. One had to know that when Giant Armored faced the fox demon only needed a glance to make Giant Armored fall. At that time, the fox demon used the same method on Giant Armored as Lu Yi used on the arachnid race today. To be continued. Chapter 650. Using the power of his spirit as the source, a complex divine charm sigil appeared in Lu Ye's eyes. Using their gazes as the starting point, the divine charm sigil's power began to blossom, attacking the insectoid's low spirit intelligence and planting a brand in its mind. The fox demon could enslave the giant arachnid with a single glance because of her innate talent. Lu Yi was far from being able to do that, but under the impact of the divine charm sigil, the spider insectoid's mind instantly fell into disarray. It froze on the spot, its raised limbs unable to fall down immediately. Lu Yi had a very strange feeling at this moment. Although he had already understood the various aspects of the divine charm sigil from the enormous amount of information contained in the talent tree's leaf, this was his first time using it. He could feel the resistance and struggle in the spider insectoid's mind. It was as if the consciousness of a human and an insectoid had entered an invisible battlefield at this moment and were fighting against each other. In this state, whether it was him or the spider insectoid, their control over their bodies was greatly reduced. Lu Yi was secretly glad that he had chosen an insectoid that was alone. Otherwise, if other insectoids attacked him in this situation, he might not have had time to react. At the same time, he became somewhat vigilant. The divine charm sigil was strange and unpredictable, but when using it, one had to ensure one's own safety. One had to ensure that one's body would not be disturbed by external forces or have helpers by one's side. Insectoids generally had low spirit intelligence. If Lu Yi used the divine charm sigil against a cultivator of the same level as him, it would at most cause their minds to tremble. However, it was a real killing weapon against insectoids. The spider insectoid's struggle and resistance lasted for less than 5 breaths before its mental defenses were completely broken. The power of the divine charm sigil continued to be used, planting a brand in its mind. The feeling of exhaustion and weakness swept over him again, making Lu Ye's eyelids feel heavy. The divine charm sigil consumed much more spirit strength than the sharp spirit sigil. He panted lightly and looked up at the spider insectoid in front of him. The insectoid had already lowered its forelimbs. Even if Lu Yi was standing in front of it, it showed no hostility. Lu Yi could clearly sense the imprint on the arachnid's body, and through it he could even give the arachnid some simple orders. Under Lu Ye's control, the arachnids began to move. After trying for a while, Lu Yi had a plan in mind. Although he could now give some orders to the arachnid Zerg, and the arachnid Zerg would not resist because of the imprint. The arachnid Zerg's intelligence was still lacking, so its execution was not very precise. For example, it would never be able to do something like standing on one leg. However, Lu Yi was already very satisfied. With an insectoid like this, he would be in a much safer situation. He flipped over and jumped onto the back of the spider insectoid. Activating the concealment and aura restraining spirit inscriptions, his figure disappeared. Then, under Lu Ye's control, the spider insectoid crawled quickly in a direction. Not long after, the spider insectoids entered an area where a dozen insectoids were scattered. Observing the strength of these insectoids, Lu Yi controlled the spider insectoids to approach the strongest insectoid. This insectoid was not inferior to the spider insectoid in size. Judging from its aura alone, their strength should be similar. The insectoid was not prepared for the spider insectoid's approach, so when the spider insectoid suddenly attacked, this insectoid did not react at all. The spider insectoid's fighting style surprised Lu Yi. He ordered his temporary mount to kill the insectoid. As for how to kill, it all depended on the spider insectoid's performance. A ball of spider web suddenly sprayed out from the spider insectoid's mouth, enveloping the enemy. Then, the spider insectoid rushed forward, raised its two forelimbs high, and slammed them down heavily, constantly poking holes in the insectoid's body. Green blood flowed out, and the insectoid hissed after being injured. The insectoid wanted to resist, but under the spider web, there was no room for resistance. After struggling for a moment, it fell into a pool of blood, and its vitality dissipated. From beginning to end, Lu Yi just sat on the spider's back and watched the show. A golden light floated out from the dead insectoid's body and landed on the back of Lu Ye's hand. He couldn't help but be happy. The reason why he didn't help just now was because he didn't need it, and also because he wanted to do a test to see if he could get a merit after killing the insectoid if he didn't help. It turned out that he could get it. Strictly speaking, Lu Yi was now equivalent to a beast tamer school cultivator, and the spider insectoid was his monster beast. For a beast tamer school cultivator, controlling a monster beast to kill an enemy was equivalent to displaying one's own ability, so it was inevitable that he could get a merit. Although the battle that broke out here was short and rushed, it attracted the attention of the other insectoids. However, most of the insectoids just looked up. Although they wondered why their companions would kill each other, they didn't think too much. It wasn't until the spider insectoid killed another insectoid that the rest of the insectoids realized that something was wrong. Although they didn't have high intelligence and acted based on instinct, they could at least perceive the danger. From their point of view, their companion must have gone crazy. Although they didn't know why it attacked its companion, if they didn't stop it, everyone would die. Therefore, after the spider insectoid killed the second insectoid, the other insectoids in the surroundings gathered. On the spider insectoid's back, Lu Yi couldn't sit still anymore. When he saw that the other insectoids didn't react to his temporary mount killing an insectoid, he thought that he could enjoy the fruits of his labor and let his temporary mount kill all the insectoids in this area. But now, it seemed that he had been too optimistic. Lu Yi revealed himself and unsheathed his mountain pan saber. As he charged out, he gave the spider insectoid a simple order: kill them all. In order to save the power of his spirit, Lu Yi didn't activate his divine patterns this time. However, the strongest insectoid in this area was already dead, and most of the remaining insectoids were only equivalent to the Cloud River tier. For the current Lu Yi, killing them wasn't difficult. After a short while, the battle subsided. Lu Yi flashed back to the spider insectoid's back and sat upright, concealing himself. Rustling sounds could be heard. The nearby insectoids had sensed the commotion and were drawn over to investigate the situation. However, all they could see was a ground littered with insectoid corpses, and a lone spider insectoid standing on the battlefield. With their low intelligence, the insectoids couldn't imagine that this spider insectoid had been enslaved and turned traitor. Seeing nothing out of the ordinary, the noisy scene slowly quieted down, and the insectoids began to eat the corpses of their fellow insectoids. At this time, the spider insectoid had already left the battlefield under Lu Ye's control. He wasn't in a hurry to obtain more battle merits. As the saying went, sharpening the axe wouldn't delay the work of cutting wood. He only had one insectoid under his command now. If he could obtain a few more, the efficiency of obtaining battle merits would be higher, and the margin for error would be greater. At that time, he could move in the direction of the city lord's mansion while killing insectoids. Lu Yi wasn't sure how many insectoids he could enslave with the strength of his spirit, but he could sense that there was a limit to this. This was because after enslaving the spider insectoid, there was an inexplicable burden on his spirit. The strength of this burden was directly related to the strength of the enslaved insectoid. In other words, the stronger the insectoid, the fewer of them he could enslave. This was expected. Back then, in the Fox Immortal Valley, the number of cultivators that the fox demon could enslave was limited. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone to find trouble with the giant berserk ape every once in a while. If she could enslave them indefinitely, she could have continued to accumulate the strength of her subordinates until the giant berserk ape couldn't compete with her. Then she could have taken revenge. The fox demon could enslave nearly 100 cultivators because of her talent. Lu Yi knew that he couldn't do that. As for how many he could enslave, he would have to slowly experiment. In the Immortal Essence City, most of the insectoids moved in groups. There were very few insectoids that were alone, and those that could meet Lu Ye's requirements were even fewer. Moreover, these insectoids were basically fixed in a certain area. Unless they were chasing an enemy, they would rarely leave the area where they were chasing after their enemy. The spider insectoid that was enslaved by Lu Yi was undoubtedly an anomaly. It crawled through the streets alone. Fortunately, this loneliness didn't last for too long. After only half an hour, it had an additional companion by its side. It was an insectoid that had an extremely keen sense of smell and looked like a hound. Although this hound insectoid was much smaller than the spider insectoid, its strength wasn't weak at all. When Lu Yi enslaved the spider insectoid, he more or less took some risks. However, enslaving this hound insectoid was much safer. The spider web firmly bound the insectoid in place. Lu Yi only needed to appear and look into its eyes. Then, he activated the divine charm mark and imprinted it in its mind. Time passed, and the group continued to grow. After half a day, the spider insectoid had 6 more companions. Other than the hound insectoid at the beginning, the rest of the insectoids were all different. They were all ferocious. During this period, they also experienced some battles, which allowed Lu Yi to gain a lot of battle merits. Lu Yi felt that 7 insectoids were already his limit. The burden on his mind was very heavy. He couldn't enslave any more. If he forced himself to stop, he was afraid that it would cause damage to his soul. Casting the divine charm sigil consumed a lot of his spiritual energy. While he was enslaving these insects, he had to consume 2 drops of soul-cleansing water to replenish his spiritual energy. Although it was painful, it was worth it for his plan. Even if he couldn't enter the City Lord's mansion to obtain more soul-cleansing water, the battle merits he obtained from killing these insectoids were enough to make up for his loss. Now that the insectoid team was formed, it was time to move on to the next step. Chapter 651. His current location was considered the periphery of the Immortal Essence City. If he wanted to go to the City Lord's mansion, he would have to pass through half of the Immortal Essence City and reach the center of the city. Even if Lu Yi controlled 7 insects, this trip might not be safe. So far, the strongest insect he had encountered was only at the true lake stage. However, he was not sure if there were any insects comparable to the Spirit Sea stage here. If there were, his concealment method might not work. A team of 7 true lake stage insects was still very powerful. Along the way, they killed wave after wave of insects. Lu Ye's battle merits kept increasing and soon broke through 20,000 points. One must know that in the Tianji treasure house, it only cost 16,200 points to exchange for a golden spirit lot. His current battle merits were enough to exchange for a golden spirit lot, and he still had some left. Such an environment, coupled with Lu Ye's current methods, was simply the best place to gain battle merits. In the entire 9 regions, there was probably no cultivator who had such convenience. Although he did not know how to leave this place, Lu Yi cherished this opportunity. Not all of the insectoids they encountered were killed. Sometimes, there were too many of them, and Lu Yi didn't dare act rashly. He could only have his insectoid squads go around them. He hid himself and retracted his aura, so the insectoids couldn't sense anything amiss and didn't try to stop him. When he passed through a street, Lu Yi suddenly found something strange. The street was littered with many insects' broken limbs and minced meat. The ground was covered with green insects' blood. There were also traces of a battle around. From these traces, it could be seen that this battle was very tragic because many insects died. This made Lu Yi slightly stunned. He was sure that he had not been here before, so the traces of battle here were not left by him. Since it was not left by him, it should be left by the Immortal Essence Defenders. There were Immortal Essence Defenders in the Immortal Essence City and many strange spiritual bodies. However, the strength of these spiritual bodies was very limited. Except for the Immortal Essence City's City Lord and the strange red-robed woman, the others were only at the Spirit Stream stage. In the face of such a catastrophe, the Spirit Stream stage cultivation did not have much power to resist. Therefore, until now, Lu Yi had not encountered a single Immortal Essence Guard. In his opinion, when this catastrophe arrived, all the Immortal Essence Guards in the Immortal Essence City would have been wiped out. However, there was something strange about this battlefield. Quite a number of insects had died on the battlefield, including some powerful ones. How could the Immortal Essence Defenders, who were only at the Spirit Stream stage, kill these insects? Could it be that the City Lord or the woman in red had done it? If the two of them had attacked, there might have been a chance. However, he couldn't sense their auras nearby, so they were most likely already dead. Sitting on the spider's back and leading the insectoid squad through the battlefield, Lu Yi suddenly realized that something was wrong. The insectoids would devour the corpses of their dead companions. These corpses were still there, and judging from the fresh blood and wounds on the corpses, this battle had not taken place too long ago. In other words, not long ago, there were cultivators from the Immortal Essence City who fought with the insect clan here. There were still people alive? Lu Yi was surprised. Although he knew that this idea was a little too naive, it was not impossible. There were some special buildings in the Immortal Essence City with lanterns hanging at the door. As long as one hid in those buildings, no matter how powerful the insectoids were, they would not be able to break through. Therefore, if there were still people from the Immortal Essence City who were lucky enough to survive, they would definitely be hiding in those special buildings. The reason why the insectoid corpses on this battlefield had not been devoured was most likely because the nearby insectoids had been attracted away. Lu Yi's thoughts gradually became clear, and he immediately led his insectoid squad to search around. After an incense stick's worth of time, the insectoid squad came to a nearby street. This street was full of insectoids, as if something had attracted them here. On the entire street, a building was particularly eye-catching because the nearby buildings had all been destroyed. Only this building stood proudly, like an indestructible rock in a raging sea. In the ruins near this building, a large number of insectoids had gathered. At the door of the building, there was a red lantern hanging. Lu Yi looked at the building and could not confirm if there were people inside, but looking at the current situation, it was very likely that there were people inside. These insectoids that had gathered here were all attracted by the people hiding inside, just like what happened to him previously. If there were really people inside, then the other party's situation was not good. With so many insectoids gathered, there was no way they could leave for the time being. However, he only needed to wait for a while, and most of the insectoids would disperse. Time passed, and the insectoids with low intelligence began to disperse. However, there were still some that stayed, and there were still many of them. Many of them had extremely powerful auras, and were obviously true lake-stage insectoids. 1 hour passed, 2 hours passed, and everything was calm. Just when Lu Yi thought that he had guessed wrongly, the tightly shut door of the building suddenly opened, and a figure rushed out. Lu Yi, who had been paying attention to the commotion, was stunned, because he actually knew the figure that suddenly rushed out. The fat figure displayed an agile speed that did not match his size, and quickly rushed in front of an insectoid. The bone-paring knife in his hand slashed out a cold light, and the insectoid did not even have time to react before it was split into two. The figure passed through the two halves of the corpse and pounced on the next insectoid. He did not display a powerful aura, but it was wrapped in an indestructible aura. The bone-paring knife was extremely sharp, and the insectoid's carapace could not withstand it at all, and was easily split open. So strong? Lu Yi was dumbfounded. After all, in his impression, this guy was just a Heaven 7 or Heaven 8 spirit body. However, the strength that the other party displayed was not just a Heaven 7 or Heaven 8 spirit body, it was a level that Lu Yi could not fathom. What made Lu Yi even more surprised was that after the fat figure rushed out, more than 10 figures rushed out from the building. Although Lu Yi did not know these people, he was very familiar with their clothes. Immortal Yuan guards. More than a dozen immortal essence defenders followed closely behind the fat figure. They attacked together and began a massacre. For a time, blood flowed like a river in all directions. Many insectoids were disturbed and surrounded them. In the blink of an eye, the area was completely surrounded. Lu Yi was at a loss. Strictly speaking, everything in front of him was completely different from what he knew. The fat figure suddenly showed a level that far exceeded his cultivation level, which surprised him very much, but he did not expect the immortal Yuan guards to be the same. The last time Lu Yi came here, the immortal Yuan guards he encountered were only ordinary 8th and 9th order, and only the captain level ones were Heaven 7 or Heaven 8. But now, looking at them, none of the immortal Yuan guards was weaker than the Spirit Stream realm. Basically, they were all true Lake realm, and a few were Cloud River realm. Such a force could be said to be very powerful. Lu Yi was puzzled for a moment. Was this immortal Yuan City? Or did he enter a fake immortal Yuan City last time? Although there were many doubts in his heart, Lu Yi still responded in time. He gave his insectoid squad the order to kill the enemy. In the next moment, except for the spider insectoid, the remaining 6 insectoids rushed over. The spider insectoid was not sent to fight mainly because the situation was too chaotic. At this time, Lu Yi was likely to be exposed by the aftermath of the attack, and then he would be in trouble. Although the overall strength of the immortal Yuan guards was strong, Lu Yi could see that all of them were injured, including the fat figure. They should have experienced such a battle many times. Even without Lu Ye's secret help, they could deal with the situation in front of them, but they would inevitably consume more energy, and there might even be casualties. But with Lu Ye's secret help, the situation was different. The insectoids were not the least bit wary of their companions. At this moment, their attention was all on the immortal Yuan guards, so when the 6 insectoids attacked secretly, it was easy to kill many of their original companions. At first, the immortal Yuan guards did not notice these abnormalities. But as time passed, someone finally noticed, and an immortal Yuan guard whispered, "Sir." The fat man's boning knife slashed out rays of cold light, and he nodded imperceptibly. While killing the enemies, he secretly observed the surroundings. After a while, his gaze suddenly looked at the spider insectoid outside the battlefield. Even though Lu Yi was hiding, he could feel the other party's gaze on him. Four eyes met silently, and the man nodded slightly to Lu Yi and continued to kill the enemies. He was seen. Ripples appeared in Lu Ye's heart. His current state was special, equivalent to a true lake stage cultivator, and he also added concealment and aura concealment spiritual runes to himself. In such a state, even if the cultivation level was a few levels higher than him, it would be impossible to be discovered. Unless the other party's cultivation level was higher than his by a large realm. In other words, the person he thought was only a Heaven 7 or Heaven 8 stage cultivator was actually a Divine C stage cultivator. Thinking back to the various experiences he had when he first came to Immortal Yuan City, Lu Yi suddenly felt that it was too unreal, and for a moment, he could not tell whether this was a dream or reality. However, if the other party was really a Divine C stage cultivator, then his ferocity could be explained. In front of him, those true lake stage insectoids could not even withstand a single slash. Under the cooperation of Lu Ye's insectoid squad and the Immortal Yuan guards, the number of insectoids kept decreasing. Until a certain moment, the last insectoid was killed. The Immortal Yuan guards all relaxed, and even the guy with the boning knife heaved a long sigh of relief. Among the insectoid corpses on the ground, only the insectoid squad under Lu Ye's command was left. The immortal Yuan guards looked at the insectoids suspiciously and vigilantly, and for a moment, they could not understand what was going on with these guys. Just now, they were clearly sneak attacking their companions. Chapter 652. Go inside and rest. The cultivator with the boning knife ordered lightly. Although the immortal Yuan guardians were full of doubts, they all obeyed the order and returned to the building where they had been hiding. Immediately, the cultivator raised his head and looked in the direction of Lu Yi. His sharp eyes were scrutinizing and suspicious. Although he had noticed that Lu Yi was hiding nearby, he didn't know who he was. Moreover, there had never been a method to control insects in immortal Yuan City. However, he couldn't think too much during the battle. Now that the battle was over, he naturally had to figure it out. Sensing the other party's gaze, Lu Yi took the initiative to reveal himself. Even though the cultivator was calm and could remain calm in the face of death, he couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Lu Yi. Why are you here? Of course, he remembered Lu Yi. 1 or 2 years ago, when the sealed world of immortal Yuan City opened, Lu Yi came in. At that time, he was transformed into a frustrated spirit by Hu Pe and followed Lu Yi for a while. At that time, Lu Yi was at the 8th Order Spirit Stream realm. Now, in his opinion, he was at the True Lake realm. This kind of growth speed was simply shocking. For a moment, he thought that his memory of time had some kind of illusion. The cultivator's words made Lu Yi certain that the cultivator in front of him was the same person from last time. At that time, Hu Pe had transformed many frustrated spirits, but most of them were immortal Yuan guardians. There were only 5 special frustrated spirits. The first was Lu Sanbao, then the Peepa woman, the scholar, the butcher, and the blind fortune teller. These 5 special frustrated spirits all had their own unique skills. Whether it was cultivation or methods, they were much stronger than ordinary immortal Yuan guardians. During the trip to the sealed world of immortal Yuan City, the immortal Yuan guardians under Lu Ye's command changed very quickly, but only these 5 special frustrated spirits followed him all the time. Finally, when they met the city lord of immortal Yuan City, the connection between these frustrated spirits and Hu Pe was cut off by the city lord. At that time, Lu Yi felt that it was a pity because except for a special environment like immortal Yuan City, Hu Pe had no other place to transform frustrated spirits. After all, other than Lu Yi had never seen any other spirit bodies in the outside world. This guy who was suspected to be at the Divine Sea realm was one of the 5 special frustrated spirits, the butcher. Senior, long time no see. Lu Yi cupped his fists in greeting. He didn't know what this person's name was, but with this person's cultivation, it wasn't a problem to call him senior. The man and the spirit were both filled with doubts. How could Lu Yi appear here? And how could he control the insectoids? One of them was confused. He was just at the spirit stream tier, so how did he suddenly become at the spiritual sea tier? However, this street was clearly not the place to talk. Butcher waved his hand. Come in and talk. Lu Yi nodded and moved forward in a flash, entering the building ahead with him. As for the insectoid squad under his command, there was no need to worry about them. It would be fine even if they stayed outside. Inside the house, more than a dozen immortal essence guards were adjusting their breathing. The great battle just now made them look very tired. Some of their bodies seemed to have become less solid. This was clearly a sign of excessive exhaustion. A spirit body was not a physical body, and it existed between reality and illusion. If one consumed too much energy, such signs would appear. In more serious cases, one might even become transparent and dissipate. Lu Ye's current state was similar to a spirit body, but it was different from a pure spirit body. He still retained the ability to swallow spirit pills to replenish his spiritual power. The immortal essence guards didn't have this ability, so even if they rested here, if there was no way to replenish the consumed divine soul power, it would be useless no matter how long they rested. At most, they could only reduce the mental fatigue. Sir, this is... When Lu Yi walked in with Butcher, more than a dozen immortal essence guards were surprised. The Immortal Essence City was very big, and there were many Immortal Essence Guards. However, after so many years of living together, almost every Immortal Essence Guard knew what kind of people were in the Immortal Essence City and what those people looked like. The sudden appearance of an unfamiliar face naturally made people feel surprised. Butcher didn't mean to explain. He just said, "Have a good rest. There's still a battle to come." Then he led Lu Yi straight to the second floor. When Lu Ye's figure disappeared from sight, one of the Immortal Essence Guards seemed to have woken up from a dream. He said in a low voice, "I remember now. I was killed by this guy last time." He was talking about the incident when Lu Yi entered the Immortal Essence City. If Lu Yi was here, he would probably be puzzled. If he was killed, how could he still be standing here? An Immortal Essence Guard reacted. "So, he's an outsider? The secret realm is open? That's not right. Every time the secret realm opens, there are signs. It's not the time for the secret realm to open. Besides, the secret realm can't be opened when the Zergs are attacking the city. How did he come in?" Compared to this, I'm more concerned about some abnormalities in the battle just now. Those Zergs were actually hunting their own companions, as if they were being driven by someone. So didn't let us kill those Zergs. It seems that the one secretly driving those Zergs is this guy. How can there be such a method in this world? Didn't they say that the Zergs can't be driven? Who knows? Maybe in this era, someone has already developed a way to drive the Zergs. The group of Immortal Essence Guardians chatted with each other in full swing. This was not the same as Lu Ye's impression of the Immortal Essence Guards. In his impression, the Immortal Essence Guards were basically spirit bodies with very low intelligence. Even the captain-level ones had very rigid behavior. That was why he had a deep impression of the Butcher and other special spirit bodies. It was because these spirit bodies' behavior was no different from a living person's. But now, it seemed that the Immortal Essence Guardians were no different from living people, except that their bodies were spiritual and were different from living people. The entire Immortal Essence City seemed to be shrouded in a thick fog. On the second floor, the Butcher led Lu Yi here and let him sit down. He went to the window and quietly observed for a while before turning around and walking back. Frowning at Lu Yi, the Butcher asked, "Are you dead?" Lu Yi didn't expect the Butcher to make him roll his eyes. He immediately shook his head and denied, "No." "Then how did you come in? This isn't the time for the secret realm to open. Only when the secret realm opened would there be many living people in the Immortal Essence City, just like last time. But when the secret realm closed, those living people would be expelled. For countless years, the Immortal Essence City had always been like this. There was almost never a situation where an outsider appeared when the secret realm was not open. Lu Yi said, "I came in with the help of the Breath Fruit Core." Breath Fruit Core? The Butcher frowned. Obviously, he had never heard of such a thing. Lu Yi was about to take out the Breath Fruit Core to show it to him when he remembered that he had entered in the form of a spirit. Although he had brought everything in his storage bag and storage space, he couldn't bring it in as the key to open the Mirage Realm. At that moment, he described the appearance of the Breath Fruit Core to the Butcher and introduced its magical uses. The Butcher vaguely understood what Lu Yi was talking about. But what he couldn't understand was how that thing could let a living person enter the Immortal Essence City in the form of a spirit. But on second thought, he vaguely had an insight. If that was the case, it was not impossible. After all, it was high and mighty. But if that was the case, then this kid in front of him was somewhat unusual. After all, ordinary people were not qualified to be treated like this. "What's your name?" the Butcher asked. "I'm a disciple of the Jade Blood Sect, Lu Yi," Lu Yi replied. "Senior, how should I address you?" "Didn't you call me the Butcher?" "Just call me that." The last time Lu Yi came here, he had called him that. Of course, he remembered. Lu Yi Howren, the Butcher didn't care. "I'm the Butcher of the Immortal Essence City." "You're right to call me that." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and reminded Lu Yi, "But if you see that woman, don't call her Ying monster. If she hears it, she will not like it. Then you will suffer." Lu Yi sweated. The Ying monster was the Peepa woman. Her sound attack was very powerful. It could disturb people's minds and confuse their minds. Back then, among the 5 special sad spirits, the Ying monster Peepa woman played the strongest role. Whether it was facing the cultivators of the myriad demons Ridge or the immortal essence guards, the Peepa sound and the Ying sound together weakened the enemy's combat power by at least 30%. Her name is Shi Weining. Junior will remember it. Lu Yi nodded seriously and secretly warned himself. The Ying monster was Shi Weining, and Shi Weining was the Ying monster. But it was useless to remember it. He had called her that last time. If that woman was really a vengeful person, he would be taught a lesson when they met this time. Lu Yi said nervously, "Senior, that's Senior Shi's cultivation compared to yours, higher than mine." The butcher's words shattered Lu Ye's fantasy. He could only secretly pray that he wouldn't meet her this time. "Senior, what's up with your cultivation? When I saw you last time, weren't you only at the spirit stream realm?" Lu Yi asked the question in his heart. "Also, what's up with this immortal essence city? Why did I suddenly come here?" Butcher said, "When it comes to cultivation, what you see might not be real. Last time, when the mystic realm opened, us old farts played a game with you little fellows. The level of cultivation we displayed was directly determined by the strength of your cultivation." Game? Lu Yi didn't understand. "It's just a decoration in the endless years. You can understand it as a game to help us maintain our humanity. You don't need to understand anything else." Lu Yi nodded in confusion, but he understood the meaning of the butcher's words. When the secret realm opened in Immortal Essence City, the cultivators who came in were generally at the 8th or 9th layer of the spirit stream realm. So, the cultivation level that the butcher and the others showed was also at that level. Although it was slightly higher, it wasn't much higher. As for Immortal Essence City and why you came here, if you have the chance to see the City Lord, go ask him. If he's willing to tell you, he'll naturally tell you. Chapter 653. Butcher didn't answer Lu Yi too much. Maybe he didn't know, or maybe there were some things that were hard to say. But in this way, Lu Ye's original plan was ruined. He thought that under this catastrophe, Immortal Essence City had been completely conquered by the insect race, and the Immortal Essence defenders had been wiped out. Even the seemingly powerful City Lord and the woman in red couldn't survive. He only needed to sneak into the City Lord's mansion under the cover of his insect race squad to plunder the soul-cleansing water. But things weren't what he thought at all. In this Immortal Essence City, there were still many Immortal Essence defenders active. The City Lord was probably still alive. If the City Lord wasn't dead, even if he entered the City Lord's mansion, he wouldn't be able to get the soul-cleansing water. This was somewhat worrying. This didn't mean that Lu Yi wanted the City Lord to die, but his original plan couldn't be carried out. "Senior, when will you go to the City Lord's mansion?" Lu Yi asked. Although the hope was slim, he still wanted to try. After all, it was rare for him to come here. Compared to the battle merits, he wanted the soul-cleansing water more. This thing was crucial to his next plan. Moreover, he wanted to ask the City Lord some questions, such as how he could leave this place. This time, he entered Immortal Essence City inexplicably. He couldn't stay here forever. He had to leave eventually, but Lu Yi didn't know what to do to leave. Maybe the City Lord of Immortal Essence City could give him an answer. Butcher glanced at him and said, "My mission is to clear out the insect race in this area. I won't go back before the mission is completed." Lu Yi nodded and said, "I'll help too." If there was no hope of getting the soul-cleansing water, at least he could get more battle merits. Butcher was in the Divine Ocean realm, and most of the Immortal Essence defenders were in the True Lake realm. It would be safer to follow them. As long as Butcher could complete the mission, he could go to the City Lord's mansion with him. "Up to you." Butcher didn't refuse. Lu Yi alone might not be able to help them much, but the insect race squad under Lu Ye's command was a force to be reckoned with. With the low intelligence of the insect race, they probably never thought that they would die under the attack of their own race. "By the way, Senior, what's with these buildings with lanterns hanging at the door? I remember that the last time I was here, the Immortal Essence Guardians were unable to enter." This was also what he was puzzled about. The last time he came in, these special buildings protected the foreign cultivators and blocked the immortal essence guardians from pursuing them. Lu Yi thought that these buildings were similar to a forbidden area for the immortal essence guardians. But now, it seemed that this was not the case at all. The immortal Yuan guardians could enter. This time, the immortal essence defenders could use these buildings to hide from the immortal essence defenders. This time, the immortal essence defenders could use these buildings to recuperate and hide from the insect race. Like I said, it's just a game. What you see is only what you see. Besides, there's always a way out, understand? Lu Yi seemed to understand a little, but it also seemed like he didn't. However, he quickly realized that the main point of Butcher's sentence was the last sentence. As expected, the mysteries of heaven were everywhere. Whether it was the opening of the secret realm last time or the insect race's attack this time, these buildings that were endowed with absolute protection provided the cultivators with space to hide and recuperate. Although Butcher was in the divine ocean realm, he didn't have the majesty of a divine ocean realm cultivator. Moreover, it seemed that he hadn't chatted with a living person for a long time, so he chatted with Lu Yi about many things, especially the current situation of the outside world. Lu Yi casually talked about it, and Butcher listened with great interest. From time to time, he asked some questions, and Lu Yi answered them one by one. He also asked Lu Yi about the method of controlling the insect race. Lu Yi didn't hide anything. Butcher was greatly surprised when he learned that it was actually the power of a divine pattern. He originally thought that Lu Yi was a cultivator of the beast taming school and could control the insect race because of the beast taming method. After resting for less than 2 hours, a group of immortal essence defenders set off under Butcher's lead. They were all on a mission. Moreover, there were many teams of immortal essence defenders like them in the entire immortal essence city. Each team was responsible for an area. The main reason why Lu Yi didn't encounter them before was because he was at the periphery of the immortal essence city. Now, most of the immortal essence defenders were located in the middle of the city. Lu Yi naturally didn't encounter them along the way. A divine ocean realm cultivator led the team, and there were 7 to 8 true lake realm cultivators in the team. Such a force was very strong, and the insect race they encountered basically didn't have the power to resist. However, there were simply too many insect race cultivators in the immortal essence city. Once they were caught in a fierce battle and caused too much commotion, the insect race's reinforcements would be endless. Therefore, even though the overall strength of the team was very strong, they didn't act too recklessly. Butcher would always find a special building nearby as a retreat route. After killing a batch of insect race cultivators, he would then lead the immortal essence defenders to retreat and rest. This cycle repeated as they advanced towards the periphery of the city. Lu Ye's insect race team was of great help in many situations. In the chaotic battle, the 7 insect race cultivators picked up many advantages, allowing Lu Ye's battle merits to continuously increase. This also reduced the pressure on the immortal essence defenders. The Butcher and the rest were normal cultivators, then this would definitely be a battle without much suspense. Unfortunately, Butcher and the rest were all spiritual bodies, and there was no way for them to effectively replenish the energy consumed in the battle. Therefore, the more time passed, the weaker they became. The few immortal essence defenders whose strength was only at the Cloud River realm already felt somewhat transparent at this moment. However, they didn't seem to feel it and didn't care at all. When they rested, they chatted and laughed with Lu Yi. It was rare for living people to come to the immortal essence city. Moreover, it was a living person who could communicate with them. Therefore, these immortal essence defenders were incomparably enthusiastic towards Lu Yi. Each and every one of them pulled him to chat casually. There was even a female immortal essence defender with a fiery personality who asked some difficult questions. Lu Yi didn't answer, and the other immortal essence defenders sneered. After another big battle, Butcher led the immortal essence defenders to retreat and rest. Just like before, even if they were incomparably weak, even if their bodies had become translucent, these immortal essence defenders didn't care at all. They gave Lu Yi the feeling that they had already seen through life and death. Even in the face of death, they didn't have the slightest fear. Lu Yi couldn't help but feel respect for them. He hesitated for a long time, and finally went up to the second floor alone to find Butcher. "What's the matter?" Butcher looked at him curiously. Lu Yi said, "There's soul-cleansing water in the soul-cleansing pool. It should be able to help you recover, right? Didn't you bring some out?" He originally thought that Butcher and the others would definitely bring some soul-cleansing water with them to replenish their energy consumption. But now, it seemed that they didn't have it at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't have slowly weakened to such a state. The soul pool has soul fog, not soul water. Ordinary methods can't condense it at all, so it can't be brought out, Butcher explained. Lu Yi was stunned. He didn't expect it to be like this. Thinking about it, the soul-cleansing pool was indeed filled with soul fog. Back then, he had built a huge soul-gathering funnel to condense the soul-cleansing water. For others, even those in the Divine Sea realm might not have the ability to do so. What Lu Yi didn't know was that for thousands of years, the spirit bodies in the immortal Essence City had lived like this. Death wasn't scary to them. It was just a new journey. And the soul pool was very important. It was the foundation of the immortal Essence City and even the other infinite mirage realms. As long as the soul pool was there, as long as its power wasn't exhausted, the immortal Essence City wouldn't fall. So since ancient times, no one had ever thought of condensing the soul fog into soul water and bringing it out. If they really did it, it would be fine once or twice. But if it happened too many times, it would inevitably have some impact on the soul pool. So even if a powerhouse like the City Lord had the means to condense soul water, he wouldn't do it. You know about the soul pool? Butcher was a little surprised. Yes, I went there last time. Lu Yi nodded. Last time, he made a deal with the City Lord. The City Lord agreed to let him bring the Amber Giant armor into the soul pool to cleanse his soul. In the end, he fished out some soul-cleansing water, which made the City Lord very angry. I don't have much of this left. You guys use it sparingly, Lu Yi said as he took out a jade bottle and handed it to Butcher. Butcher took it suspiciously and opened the bottle. Instantly, his eyes were filled with surprise. Where did you get it? As a spirit body in the immortal Essence City, he could tell what was in the bottle at a glance. He couldn't figure out how Lu Yi got such a thing. What do you think? Lu Yi glanced at him. Butcher quickly reacted and laughed. The City Lord didn't kill you. It seemed that he didn't kill him. Otherwise, Lu Yi wouldn't still be alive. Butcher finally understood why the City Lord's mood was a little irritable after the secret realm opened last time. It turned out that it was because of this reason. Kid, I'll remember this favor. Butcher raised his hand and patted Lu Yi's shoulder. He raised his hand and urged his power to take a drop from the bottle and swallow it. In an instant, the weakness that lingered around his body dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Butcher went down one floor and nourished the remaining soul-cleansing water in the bottle to the other Immortal Essence Defenders. The weak Immortal Essence Defenders became lively again in a short period of time. After learning that this soul-cleansing water was actually contributed by Lu Yi, the Immortal Essence Defenders, who had a good impression of Lu Yi, became even more enthusiastic. Yu Qing, a female spirit body with a fiery personality, looked as if she couldn't wait to repay him with her body. This made Lu Yi very embarrassed. On the other hand, the other Immortal Essence Defenders watched the show from the side and gloated. Under Butcher's leadership, they used the special buildings as strongholds to clear out the insectoids on the streets one after another. Although their strength had been replenished, the task of eradicating the insectoids in this area was still difficult. After a series of battles, the Immortal Essence Defenders became weak again as their strength was consumed. This time, however, there was no more soul-cleansing water to replenish their strength. Lu Yi's battle merits had exceeded 100,000, but he didn't feel too happy. Looking at the Immortal Essence Defenders who were still smiling despite their weakness, Lu Yi's mind was full of doubts. Were these guys really not afraid of death at all? Even if they were spirits, they shouldn't be so calm in the face of death. To be continued. Chapter 654. Look at them, they're so happy. Yu Qing's soft body leaned over and her voice rang in his ear. Although she was very weak and her body was not as solid as before, it was undeniable that Yu Qing in this state had a sickly beauty to her. However, Lu Yi did not think of her as a delicate woman. Although they had only known each other for a short time, he had already experienced her fiery personality. Are you curious why they're so optimistic? Yu Qing whispered into Lu Ye's ear. Lu Yi nodded and asked the question in his heart. Senior, are you really not afraid of death? Yu Qing rolled her eyes and said, Why are you calling me senior? You're making me sound old. An immortal essence guardian who was eavesdropping on them laughed. You're an old woman who's thousands of years old. Is it wrong for Lu Yi to call you senior? Yu Qing was furious. Lu Dong, if you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll tear your mouth off. The immortal essence guardian named Lu Datong did not care. He winked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi, you have to keep yourself clean. Don't be tricked by this old monster. Let me tell you. Before he could finish, Yu Qing grabbed a chair beside her and threw it at him. Lu Datong raised his hand to block it. Seeing Yu Qing's angry posture, he could not help but shrink his neck and admit defeat. Okay, I won't say anything. As he said this, he reached out his hand and pulled his mouth shut, as if he was trying to seal his mouth shut. Yu Qing glared at him fiercely before giving up. She turned her head and looked at him shyly. Her tone became gentle again. Call me big sister. Lu Yi sighed. Senior, please don't joke around. Yu Qing curled her lips. You're so boring. Serves you right for still having young energy. No woman outside will like you. Lu Yi was speechless. Yu Qing pursed her lips and smiled. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. But don't worry too much. Death is nothing to people like us. It's not that we don't fear death, but we're already used to it. Sometimes, death can be a relief. Lu Yi did not know what kind of experience Yu Qing had to go through for her to say this. It seemed she was not the only one who thought this way. The other immortal essence guardians also thought this way. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so careless in this situation. That's why. Yu Qing patted Lu Ye's head, treating him like a child. If we really die in front of you, don't mind it too much. You're different from us. Living in the present is the greatest respect for the future. Lu Yi thought for a moment. Yu Qing nodded. Immortal Essence City's foundation is there. If the insectoids take over the City Lord estate, then the entire Immortal Essence City will truly fall. Yu Qing smiled. But don't worry too much. With the City Lord and Master Hongyu there, the City Lord estate will be fine. For a few thousand years, the insectoids couldn't do anything to us. A few thousand years. This wasn't the first time Lu Yi heard this from the Immortal Essence Guardians. He frowned. You've been fighting like this for a few thousand years? It's always been like this. Lu Yi felt something wasn't right. If Immortal Essence City had been defending against the attacks of the insectoids for a few thousand years, how could it hold on? At the very least, how could there be so many Immortal Essence Guardians in Immortal Essence City? People would always die in war. Spirit bodies were the same. The insectoids couldn't take it over once or twice, but there was no reason they couldn't take it over after a few thousand years. Even with the City Lord and Hongyu there, it wouldn't be enough. Hongyu was probably the woman in red that Lu Yi met last time. But before he could ask, Butcher walked down from the second floor and said plainly, Let's go. All of a sudden, all the Immortal Essence Guardians stood up. Yu Qing raised her hand and patted Lu Ye's shoulder. Do what you did before. You must protect yourself. No matter how great the danger is, don't rush to the rescue. Lu Yi nodded subconsciously. Walking out of the building where they were hiding, the Immortal Essence Guardians continued their mission of eliminating the insectoids under Butcher's lead. Their progress was quite smooth. Although the Immortal Essence Guardians were getting weaker due to the consumption of energy, the insectoids were generally weaker as they went further out. As Yu Qing said, the insectoids' target was the City Lord estate. Therefore, the closer they were to the City Lord estate, the stronger the insectoids were. Especially the outer area of the City Lord estate, It was basically the battlefield of the Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Many insectoids comparable to the Divine Sea Realm were basically active there. This was also the reason why Lu Yi hadn't encountered any Divine Sea Realm insectoids before. With his current strength, if he really encountered a Divine Sea Realm insectoid, he wouldn't be able to fight back. Even the concealment and aura concealing spiritual tattoos might not be effective. The commotion caused by the battle constantly attracted more insectoids wandering nearby. Led by Butcher, the entire Immortal Essence Guardians was surrounded. If they were at their peak, it wouldn't be a big deal to deal with such a situation. But now, all the Immortal Essence Guardians, including Butcher, were extremely weak, which made the situation a little anxious. Fortunately, Lu Yi was still there. He had been staying at the outer area of the battlefield, controlling his insectoid team to kill the enemies in the chaos, gradually reducing the pressure on the Immortal Essence Guardians. If nothing unexpected happened, the Immortal Essence Guardians would eventually win this battle. However, something unexpected happened very suddenly. When the blade flashed with a cold light, the bodies of two Immortal Essence Guardians were suddenly torn into pieces. Their dim bodies quickly turned transparent at this moment. Their faces were full of astonishment. Obviously, they didn't expect such an unforeseen event. In the blink of an eye, the two Immortal Essence Guardians were gone. Beside them, an inconspicuous praying mantis insectoid, which was covered in wounds, burst out with a powerful aura. It was a Divine Sea Realm insectoid. Normally, a Divine Sea Realm insectoid wouldn't appear in such a place. Besides, it was covered in wounds. Obviously, it had gone through a tough battle. This insectoid should have come from the direction of the City Lord's mansion. It was wounded in the battle there, so it needed to devour the corpses of other insectoids to recover. Somehow, it came here and happened to run into the Immortal Essence Guardians led by Butcher. No one had paid any attention to it before it made its move. However, its thunderous attack had instantly reduced the originally complete Immortal Essence Guard team by 2 members. The sharp boring knife slashed at Yuqing. Yuqing couldn't block such an attack at all. Seeing this, Lu Yi didn't hesitate at all. He activated wind travel on his legs and instantly removed his stealth state. Then he pounced on the battlefield. "How dare you!" Butcher shouted angrily. He raised the boning knife in his hand and blocked the fatal blow of the boring knife. The two Divine Sea Realm insectoids instantly engaged in a fierce battle. One had yet to recover from his injuries, and the other was at the end of his rope. They fought in full swing and were evenly matched. The aftermath of the battle engulfed the insectoids, and they died instantly. The Immortal Essence Guardians also responded at this moment. They worked together to open up a bloody path and avoided the battlefield of the Divine Sea Realm. Lu Datong, who was leading the team, looked up and saw Lu Yi rushing toward them. He cursed under his breath and led the team toward Lu Yi. Another 7 insectoid teams created chaos on the side. The situation was chaotic. But soon, the Immortal Essence Guardians came to Lu Ye's rescue. However, the situation wasn't good for them. Originally, with Butcher, a Divine Sea Realm cultivator, holding the fort, the Immortal Essence Guards would be able to deal with the overwhelming number of insectoids. However, now that Butcher was entangled with the Divine Sea Realm mantis, Yuqing, Lu Datong, and the others were under a lot of pressure. If they were alone, dying in battle wouldn't be a big deal. But there was still Lu Yi on the battlefield. Before they set off, Yuqing specifically told Lu Yi that no matter what danger the others were in, he shouldn't rush to their rescue. He only needed to protect himself. Of course, Lu Yi remembered it in his heart. But how could he do nothing when he saw 2 Immortal Essence Guardians die tragically? At that moment, his body acted before his mind. "Break out! Return to the stronghold!" Yuqing shouted. The nearest stronghold was only 1 street away. Under normal circumstances, such a distance wasn't too far. But if they wanted to kill their way out of the encirclement of the insectoids, the chances were slim. But at this moment, no one had a choice. If they continued to stay here, they would only be waiting for death. No one expected that there would be a Divine Sea Realm insectoid hidden in such a place, which made this mission so dangerous. The insectoid team played a miraculous role as usual. Under Lu Ye's control, they formed a barrier behind everyone, blocking the pursuit of many insectoids. But in the end, this was just drinking poison to quench thirst. It couldn't completely change the situation. Everyone fought their way forward. Immortal Essence Guardians fell to the ground one after another. In a short time, more than half of the team of Immortal Essence Guardians had fallen. And because of the leakage of a large amount of energy, the remaining Immortal Essence Guardians' spiritual bodies became more and more illusory. Yu Qing's body became translucent, but she and Lu Datong guarded Lu Yi tightly. Behind them was the violent battle between Butcher and the Mantis. The Immortal Essence Guardians surrounded Lu Yi in the middle and fled for their lives. Seeing the Immortal Essence Guardians fall one by one, Lu Ye's heart rippled with grief, spreading in his heart. "Hurry up and send him in!" Lu Datong shouted angrily and turned to face the insectoids who were chasing after them. When Lu Yi looked back, he only saw the blabbermouth Immortal Essence Guardian being drowned by the insectoid tide. Chapter 655. The short distance of a street had become the boundary between life and death. The Immortal Essence defenders turned around to block the insect tide without hesitation, but they were soon drowned. The building with red lanterns hanging at the entrance was finally in sight. Yu Qing was the only Immortal Essence defender left beside Lu Yi. Her spiritual body was in an abnormal translucent state, and it was clear that she was on the verge of dissipating. At the last moment, she grabbed Lu Ye's shoulder and flung him away while shouting, "Hide inside." In mid-air, the mountain saber unleashed a saber light, and the blood of two locust-like insects splattered everywhere. Lu Yi landed in front of the building. When he turned around, he could no longer see Yu Qing's figure. Behind him was a torrent of insects that blotted out the sky. He hurriedly pushed the door open and rushed into the building, then closed the door behind him. Soon after, the fierce attacks of the insects were heard from outside. However, the building was endowed with a special protective power, so no matter how the insects attacked, they could not break through it. Lu Yi clenched his fists, and his face was gloomy like never before. The sorrow in his heart made him feel an indescribable pain. He did not spend much time with Yu Qing and the others, so they were at most strangers who met by chance. They were not even friends. However, the Immortal Essence defenders had sacrificed their lives to protect him at the last moment. If it were not for the Immortal Essence defenders, Lu Yi speculated that he would not have been able to escape to this stronghold. Come to think of it, he had only given the butcher half a bottle of soul-cleansing water. What did he do to make the Immortal Essence defenders entrust their lives to him? The attacks of the insects outside were still fierce. A street away, more intense fighting noises could be heard. It was clear that the butcher and the divine ocean realm insect were fighting fiercely. Until a certain moment, the fighting noises suddenly subsided. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. He did not know the outcome of the battle and whether the butcher had won or lost. Just as he was thinking about that, the noisy insects outside became even more lively, and the unique hisses of the insects could be heard constantly. Lu Yi seemed to have realized something and hurriedly looked through the crack in the door. He saw many insects gathered in a certain area on the street, and saber lights were constantly flashing in that area. One insect after another was cut into pieces by the sharp saber lights. Butcher's fat figure then charged out and quickly arrived at the door. Lu Yi hurriedly opened the door, and the butcher flashed in. After the butcher came in, Lu Yi closed the door again, and the outside became lively again. "You're the only one?" Butcher looked around and suddenly asked. Lu Yi lowered his head. "My seniors were protecting me on my way back, but they all died in battle." Butcher seemed to see the guilt in his heart and chuckled. "If they don't protect you, they won't live for long anyway. If they die, then they die. Don't take it to heart. They—" Before he finished speaking, Butcher paused. His face suddenly revealed a meaningful expression. He changed the topic. "Since you survived, then live well. Don't let them down." The butcher stepped forward and handed over his boning knife. "I'll leave this to you. You must take good care of it." Lu Yi was stunned. He looked up and his expression changed. "Senior?" The butcher sat down cross-legged and sighed. "I'm a bit tired. Rest for a bit. Don't mind it." With that, he closed his eyes. His nearly transparent body distorted and disappeared, and the boning knife in his hand fell to the ground with a crisp sound. He had won the battle just now, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. He had forced himself to return here, but he could not hold on any longer. Lu Yi was speechless as he looked at the spot where the butcher disappeared. He didn't know what kind of belief supported these immortal essence defenders, but from the few conversations he had with Yu Qing and the others, he learned that they had been fighting this kind of war for thousands of years. After thousands of years of continuous fighting, these immortal essence defenders had the idea that death was a release. Lu Datong, Yu Qing, and the immortal Yuan defenders whose names Lu Yi could not name had not shown any fear at the last moment of their lives. They had never been afraid of death. After an unknown period of time, Lu Yi stepped forward and bowed respectfully to the spot where the butcher disappeared. Then he picked up the boning knife and put it in his storage space. Then, he found a place to sit down cross-legged and took a spirit pill to recover. The butcher team had been wiped out, but their mission had not been completed. Even if it was out of remembrance and respect, Lu Yi still wanted to carry out the original mission for them, which was to wipe out the insectoids in this area. He had many wounds on his body, all of which were left when he broke out of the encirclement. These wounds were difficult to heal. He could have used the soul-cleansing water, but he had given the last of it to the butcher. However, he still had the strength to fight. He just had to be careful not to consume his spiritual energy. In his perception, there were still 5 insectoids in his team. The other 2 were killed by other insectoids in the chaos. With 5 insectoids and himself, as long as he was careful enough, it should not be a problem to complete the mission for the butcher team. The premise was that they did not encounter any more Divine Sea Realm insectoids. However, it was not easy to encounter Divine Sea Realm insectoids. This encounter was purely a coincidence. These powerful insectoids were usually close to the City Lord Mansion. The noise outside gradually calmed down. There was no more laughter in the stronghold. There was only silence. After resting for 4 hours, Lu Yi got up and looked outside through the crack in the door. There were not many insectoids scattered around. 5 of them were controlled by his subordinates. With a thought, he gave the 5 insectoids an order, controlling them to move closer to the insectoids that were close to them. The moment Lu Yi opened the door, all the insectoids in his field of vision were alarmed. Driven by their instincts, they rushed over. However, the slaughter had already begun. When the 5 controlled insectoids attacked, their lives were instantly extinguished. Lu Ye's figure turned into an afterimage as he charged forward. He unsheathed his Panshan saber and slashed out a crescent-shaped blade light. The insectoids charging at him fell in a row in an instant. He did not control the commotion of the battle. In fact, he deliberately made it louder to attract nearby insectoids. Next to him was a stronghold where he could hide. If the situation was not good, he would rush back immediately. This way, he could ensure his own safety. More and more insectoids were attracted. The battlefield was littered with insectoid limbs. Specks of golden light floated to the back of Lu Ye's hand from all directions. He did not have the time to check his contribution. There was only one thought in his mind: kill all the insectoids in his field of vision. This battle ended after 2 hours. Lu Yi dragged his exhausted body back to the stronghold to recuperate. Outside the door, the 5 enslaved insectoids were quietly guarding. Half a day later, the door was opened again. Lu Yi walked out. Although he had tried his best not to use his spirit during the battle, the situation on the battlefield was constantly changing. There were many times when he could not control himself. Compared to before this battle, Lu Yi was undoubtedly weaker. However, this weakness was only in his spirit. It did not affect his ability to exert his strength. He landed on the spider insectoid's back in a flash and activated the concealment and aura-concealing spirit tattoos. Under Lu Ye's command, the 5 insectoids moved in the direction of the next stronghold. Lu Yi only knew that the Butcher Squad's mission was to clear out all the insectoids in this area. However, he did not know how big this area was. The only thing he was sure of was that the scope of the clearing was from the inside to the outside, so it was correct that they were heading toward the outside of the city. He had originally walked from the periphery to the middle of the city. In the end, he had to turn back again. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. Fortunately, the closer he went to the periphery, the lower the average strength of the insectoids. Every time he found a stronghold, Lu Yi would first check the surroundings to see if there were any powerful insectoids. If there were, he would rely on his insectoid squad to kill them. If there were none, he would directly cause a commotion in front of the stronghold and attract all the nearby insectoids. Fighting alone was undoubtedly very boring. Previously, with the butcher leading the team, they had swept through everything. Insectoids did not have much power to resist. However, now that he could only rely on himself, Lu Yi felt the pressure. Fortunately, killing insectoids gave him battle merits. He rested again and again, killing enemies again and again. Rivers of blood flowed outside each stronghold, and mountains of corpses were piled up. Lu Yi did not know how many insectoids he had killed. He only knew that his battle merits were approaching the 200,000 mark. His body grew weaker and weaker. Lu Yi had a vague feeling that he would not be able to complete the mission for the butcher squad. He could not help but feel a little regretful. Finally, he arrived at the outermost area of the city. Looking ahead, a thick fog rolled in front of him, isolating the entire city. Looking at the thick fog, Lu Yi could not help but feel a sense of familiarity. Every time he entered the Mirage realm in the past, those monsters would charge out from this fog. He was once very curious about what was inside this fog, so he had once entered it to investigate. Unfortunately, he had not gone far before he was mysteriously killed. He did not expect that there would be such a thick fog outside Immortal Essence City. What would it be like if he walked in? Lu Yi quickly dispelled the thought in his heart. Although he didn't know what would happen if he walked into the thick fog, he was certain that the outcome wouldn't be good. It was better to stay in the Immortal Essence City and move about. He changed direction and led his insectoid squad to the side to continue the mission of eliminating insectoids. One street after another was cleared out. Wherever they passed, all the insectoids were killed. Lu Ye's body grew weaker and weaker, and he was already showing signs of becoming translucent. Although he would rest after every battle, the exhaustion of his spiritual energy still made him feel a little dizzy. There was only one thought in his mind at all times, which was to close his eyes and have a good sleep. Who cares if the world is turning upside down? To be continued. While he was puzzled, the butcher's face suddenly flashed in his mind, as well as the figures of Lu Datong and Yu Qing. The moment before he fainted, he seemed to have seen these immortal essence defenders who should have been dead. But it was ultimately just an illusion. How could the dead be resurrected? In that case, other immortal essence defenders should have found him, brought him back to the City Lord's mansion, and placed him in the soul-cleansing pond. Although the possibility was small, it was the only explanation. He had learned from the butcher that there were many immortal essence defenders active in Immortal Essence City, and they were just one of them. Each Immortal Essence Defender squad was responsible for clearing out the insect race in an area. Perhaps another Immortal Essence Defender squad had completed their mission and discovered him when they were scouting around. Although he didn't know who had brought him here, this was undoubtedly a life-saving grace. Lu Yi silently remembered this kindness. The depleted soul power was perfectly replenished. Not only that, but it was also much stronger than before. It could be said that Lu Ye's current state was better than ever. As the saying went, one would think of the after having enough to eat and wear. This sentence was also valid for Lu Yi. At this moment, he was not thinking of the thick soul fog around him. The last time he came here, he had taken a few bottles of soul-cleansing water with him. Although he didn't know who had placed him in the soul-cleansing pond this time, how could he miss this rare opportunity? Therefore, after learning about his situation, Lu Yi urged his power almost without hesitation and spread it out in all directions. Huge yin and yang primordial hooks connected and merged. In the blink of an eye, a huge spirit-gathering funnel was formed in the soul fog. To be continued. Chapter 657. Beside the soul-cleansing pool in the City Lord Mansion, the City Lord of Immortal Essence City stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the soul-cleansing pool quietly. His deep eyes seemed to be able to penetrate the heavy fog and look into the depths of the soul-cleansing pool. Butcher was standing not far behind him. Previously, he had brought Lu Yi here and placed him in the soul-cleansing pool. Since then, he had not left. Although Lu Ye's body had not completely dissipated when he brought him here, he was still a little worried. There were Immortal Essence Guardians reporting the situation of the various battlefields in the city. Now, the invading insect clan in the city had basically been annihilated. This war had once again ended with Immortal Essence City's victory. It had been like this for thousands of years. What Lu Yi did not know was that the spirit bodies of Immortal Essence City were almost immortal and indestructible. They had left their divine soul imprints in the soul-cleansing pool, so even if they died outside, they could be resurrected with the power of the soul-cleansing pool. This was also the reason why Butcher and the others could be resurrected from the dead. The soul-cleansing pool was the foundation of Immortal Essence City. If the insect clan wanted to capture Immortal Essence City, there was only one way. That was to destroy Immortal Essence City's defensive power with absolute military strength, capture the City Lord Mansion, and destroy the soul-cleansing pool. Otherwise, no matter how many insect clan members there were and how strong they would not be able to capture Immortal Essence City. Every time the insect clan invaded in history, the process was shockingly similar. In the beginning, Immortal Essence City was always at a disadvantage because there were too many insect clan members. There were also many powerful insect clan members. However, the insect clan members were killed, but the cultivators of Immortal Essence City could continuously come out of the soul-cleansing pool and rejoin the battlefield. Under this situation, the threat of the insect clan would gradually be eliminated, and Immortal Essence City would be able to win. This war had gone on for about half a month. The time when Lu Yi entered was when the war was at its most intense. Now, the war was about to end, and the huge gap in the sky had disappeared at some point. The Immortal Essence Guardian left after reporting the situation. Butcher was bored from waiting, so he asked, "City Lord, is this kid really the chosen one?" Although he had muttered a few words in front of Lu Datong, Yu Qing, and the others, that was only because he had heard the City Lord mention it. The City Lord was still looking at the bottom of the soul pool and said, "When he came in last time, 3 of the 4 symbols had gathered. This time, all of them have gathered. Moreover, he seems to have a powerful spiritual tattooist inheritance, which allows him to display some spiritual tattoos at will. If he is not the chosen one, I can't imagine how high the requirements for the chosen ones would be." Speaking of this, he changed the topic. However, he should only be one of the chosen ones. "There are other people who were chosen?" Butcher frowned. The City Lord said, "You won't put all your eggs in one basket, especially for that kind of existence. Over the past few thousand years, there should have been many people who were chosen. We have lived in Immortal Origin City for a long time, so we don't know anything about the outside world. Naturally, we don't know what happened to those who were chosen. But from the current situation, none of those who were chosen have really succeeded." Butcher nodded. If someone really succeeded, then they wouldn't have to stay here and guard the Immortal Essence City. They would also gain complete freedom. However, there will be a result in the end. There is not much time left. The City Lord sighed. The last time he saw Lu Yi, he had said the same thing, but that was just him talking to himself, and no one heard it. Butcher's expression was dignified. "Sir, how much time do you think we have left?" "Who knows?" The City Lord shook his head slowly. "Presumably, you have also felt that the number of insects attacking the city has been increasing over the years. Correspondingly, the power of the soul pool has been decreasing year by year. Perhaps after a few decades, the power of the insects will be so strong that we can't resist it. Or perhaps after a few years, the soul pool will dry up and we will lose our immortal body. No matter what happens, Immortal Origin City will fall. At that time, 9 regions will perish." Butcher's eyebrows were heavy. As the cultivators of Immortal Origin City, They had been guarding here for thousands of years. These Divine Sea Realm cultivators knew more secrets than the Divine Sea Realm cultivators of 9 regions. The safety of Immortal Origin City was not only related to Immortal Origin City, but also related to the entire 9 regions. Perhaps the cultivators of 9 regions never knew that in such a place, there were many spirits that had been fighting against the insects for thousands of years and guarding the safety of 9 regions. Even if someone told them this at this moment, no one would believe it. After all, this kind of fact was somewhat ridiculous. As for the increasing number of insects mentioned by the city lord, it must be that the insect nest had been able to devour the power of the outside world. This was not a good phenomenon. If the connection between the insect nest and the outside world was strong to a certain extent, then the originally imperfect protection would inevitably have a bigger loophole. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable. And the soul pool, although the energy in the soul pool was extremely huge in the past thousands of years, the spirits of Immortal Origin City had been constantly resurrected, which was also consuming the power of the soul pool. One day, the power of the soul pool would be exhausted. At that time, the spirits of Immortal Origin City would lose their immortal and indestructible characteristics. Various signs indicated that time was indeed running out. This world needed someone who could turn the tide, but whether or not those chosen could pass the final test was something that no one knew. After thousands of years of waiting, there was no result. Who could expect a miracle? For a moment, Butcher's heart was sad. "That brat woke up," the city lord suddenly said. "Is there any serious problem?" Butcher quickly asked. "He just consumed a lot of his divine soul power. What serious problem can there be?" Sure enough, this brat has started to do bad things again. The city lord suddenly gnashed his teeth. Butcher suddenly asked, "He's stealing soul water?" In the entire 9 regions, soul cleansing water could only be produced in the soul pool. Previously, when Lu Yi gave him half a bottle of soul cleansing water, Butcher knew that the soul water came from the soul pool. Humph! The city lord coldly snorted and turned to look at Butcher. "You tell me what to do. He's not from Immortal Essence City. Logically speaking, he can't enter the soul pool. Last time, in order to help you get out of trouble, I made an exception for him. This time, you said that he was included in your team, so I let him enter the soul pool to recuperate. Now, he actually did such a shameless thing. Tell me, should I slap him to death or slap him to death?" Butcher sneered. "He did help complete our team's mission. After we were all annihilated, he fought to the point of exhaustion. There's no problem for him to be an extra member." Previously, when Butcher brought Lu Yi back, the city lord was really surprised because he didn't expect Lu Yi to enter Immortal Essence City at this time. Then, he learned from Butcher how Lu Yi entered Immortal Essence City. This was also the reason why the city lord concluded that Lu Yi was the chosen one. If he wasn't the chosen one, how could he enter Immortal Essence City in such a way? Moreover, the timing was so clever. It was when the insect race attacked the city. If he entered at any other time, the entire Immortal Essence City would be dead silent. All the spiritual bodies were sleeping in the soul pool, and Lu Yi wouldn't be able to get any benefits. However, because he entered at such a clever time, although he fought to the point of exhaustion, he still managed to get many benefits. However, as the city lord said, Lu Yi wasn't a cultivator of Immortal Essence City. Logically speaking, he couldn't enter the soul pool. It was Butcher who made the decision to include him in his team as an extra member. Chapter 658. In the entire 9 continents, even warriors at the Spirit Sea Realm couldn't have such a large amount of battle credits. It wasn't that Spirit Sea Realm warriors couldn't get so many battle credits. It was just that Spirit Sea Realm warriors also needed to use battle credits to exchange for cultivation resources. Who would have so many battle credits with them? With over 300,000 battle merits, he could exchange them for 20 golden spirit lots. With Lu Ye's current 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivation, if he had 20 golden spirit lots, he could easily break through to the 8th or 9th Order. Although the city lord could see some of Lu Ye's movements in the soul pond, he had no way of knowing how many battle merits Lu Yi had. After getting the answer from the butcher, he immediately had a plan. However, even if he was the city lord of Immortal Essence City, he could not get the corresponding amount of soul water by consuming Lu Ye's battle merits. This kind of thing had to rely on the power of Heaven's secret. It just so happened that he could also test whether this person was the chosen one. If so, Heaven's secret would definitely respond. If not, naturally, there would be no response. After making up his mind, he cupped his fists towards the void and softly chanted, "Immortal Essence City's Jiyuan respectfully invites Heaven's secret. Today, an outsider named Lu Yi entered my Immortal Essence City and fought a bloody battle to the death. He killed the invading insect race and injured his spirit body. He was allowed to enter the soul pond to recuperate, but when he woke up, he had bad intentions and stole the soul water from the soul pond, destroying the foundation of Immortal Essence City. I should have killed him as a warning to others, but in view of his merits, I cannot bear to do so. I ask Heaven's secret to give him the right to exchange for soul water with his battle merits." Jiyuan said this short speech without pause, sonorous and powerful. The moment he finished speaking, Heaven's secret fell from the sky. Jiyuan raised his brow, and the butcher, who was standing behind him, showed a thought-provoking look. It was confirmed that the boy was the chosen one. Although Heaven's secret was omnipresent and any cultivator could respectfully ask Heaven's secret to be a witness or sign some contracts, it was rare to see Heaven's secret bestowing a special power to a single person, especially when this matter involved the soul water in the soul pond. This was the foundation of Immortal Essence City. How could the high and mighty Heaven's secret not know the importance of soul water? But after Jiyuan finished speaking, he still gave a response. That boy was definitely chosen, so he could receive such special treatment from Heaven's secret. Since Tianji had given Lu Yi the right to exchange for soul water, what else could Jiyuan say? Jiyuan wasn't sure what the exchange rate was, but he didn't need to worry about it. Heaven's secret would make its own judgment. Furthermore, soul water was extremely important. If that brat was really like what Butcher said and only had a few tens of thousands of battle merits, he probably wouldn't be able to exchange for much soul water. That was what he thought. Lu Yi didn't notice the commotion beside the soul cleansing pool. At this moment, he was concentrating on condensing the soul water. The last time he came here, he was only an 8th order spirit stream realm cultivator. Although he was now a 5th order cloud river realm cultivator, due to some special circumstances, his current strength was comparable to a true lake realm cultivator. Therefore, the spirit gathering funnel he constructed this time was much larger than the previous one. Naturally, the commotion it caused was incomparable to the previous one. The huge funnel emitted a boundless devouring power, swallowing the dense soul mist and condensing it into soul water. Lu Yi originally used a jade bottle to store the soul water, but he found that the soul water condensed too quickly, and the jade bottle was soon full. So, he simply took out an empty water bag and placed it under the spirit gathering funnel, listening to the sound of the soul water dripping into it. Lu Yi was in a wonderful mood, thinking that this was the most beautiful sound in the world. He didn't know that there was a master above the soul cleansing pool who was secretly gnashing his teeth. While collecting the soul water, he was also paying attention to the movements around him. The last time he constructed the spirit gathering funnel here, he didn't know why the funnel kept breaking, causing him to often have to rebuild it. How could he know that the reason why this happened last time was because of Immortal Essence City's city lord, Jiyuan? If not for this, he would have been able to bring out a lot more soul-cleansing water last time. At that time, he only thought that the spirit gathering funnel he constructed wasn't stable enough, so he didn't think too much about it. This time, he was prepared, but the same situation didn't happen again. Just as Lu Yi was happily collecting the soul water, he suddenly felt a slight warmth on the back of his hand. This strange and familiar feeling left him stunned, because this was clearly a reaction that occurred when a large number of merit points were deducted. Just like when he had opened the door that required 10,000 merit points to open, but now he was just collecting soul water, so how could a large number of merit points be deducted? Puzzled, he quickly immersed his mind to investigate, and then he discovered something incredible. What was being deducted was not merit points, but battle merits. He originally had more than 300,000 battle merits, but now he had lost 50,000 to 60,000 battle merits, and it was still decreasing at an extremely fast speed. What was going on? Lu Yi was a little flustered. In this trip to Immortal Essence City, the biggest harvest besides the soul water was these battle merits. Although the amount was not small, he had exchanged them with his life. He had originally planned to immediately enter the heavenly secret treasure house to exchange for a batch of golden spirit sticks when he returned to the Cloud River battlefield. He didn't need to raise his cultivation too high, because with his current foundation, as long as he could break through to the 7th Order Cloud River realm, there wouldn't be many people in the entire Cloud River battlefield who could threaten his safety. If he could break through to the 8th Order, it would be even better. At that time, he would be able to walk sideways in the Cloud River battlefield, and any Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivator who dared to look for trouble would be courting death. But his beautiful plan was suddenly ruined by a sudden change. Lu Yi couldn't figure out why his battle merits were decreasing for no reason, and the speed of the decrease was too fast, almost decreasing by 1,000 points. Why? Although he did use some methods to obtain these battle merits, and had mastered strength far beyond his own cultivation, they were obtained by killing the insect race one by one. How could they disappear just like that? Moreover, he had never heard of a cultivator's battle merits or battle merits disappearing in such a bizarre way. Even in the face of a hopeless situation, Lu Yi could remain calm and unperturbed. However, at this moment he panicked. As he watched his battle merits rapidly dwindle, he could not help but feel a heartache as if someone was slicing his flesh apart. More than 300,000 battle merits, more than twice his current merit points. In the cultivation world of the 9 continents, there was probably no cultivator with more battle merits than his current merit points. He hadn't even warmed up yet, but they were disappearing bit by bit. Lu Yi told himself to calm down. First, he had to at least figure out why his battle merits were disappearing for no reason. But after thinking about it, he couldn't figure it out. At most, he was stealing the soul-cleansing water. Lu Yi suddenly reacted and stared at the huge funnel in front of him. There was a pattern to the decrease of battle merits, and each time, it was 1,000 points. Whether it was merit points or battle merits, in terms of statistics and consumption, it was common knowledge that heavens will operate it. Therefore, the decrease of his battle merits was also caused by heaven's will. If heaven's will really wanted to erase this huge amount of battle merits of his, it could have just done so. There was no need to cut his flesh with a blunt knife. 1,000 points was also a thought-provoking number. Lu Yi sensed the condensation of the soul-cleansing water while paying attention to the changes in his battle merits, and gradually found a pattern. Every time his water bag received a drop of soul-cleansing water, his battle merits would decrease by 1,000 points. In order to verify his guess, Lu Yi moved the water bag placed under the funnel. Sure enough, the number of his battle merits no longer changed. Even if new soul-cleansing water condensed, as long as he didn't collect it, his battle merits wouldn't be deducted, because the condensed soul-cleansing water would quickly turn back into mist and return to the soul mist. So that's how it is. The battle merits he consumed were used to exchange for soul-cleansing water. Each drop of soul-cleansing water was worth 1,000 battle merits. Realizing this, Lu Ye's nervous mood completely relaxed. He was originally sneaking around here and was a little worried that he would be discovered. After all, taking without asking was not a good thing. But since this process would consume his battle merits, it didn't matter. Of course, this ruined his original plan to increase his cultivation. But compared to cultivation, soul-cleansing water was undoubtedly more precious. Soul-cleansing water could only be obtained in Immortal Essence City, but one's cultivation could be slowly increased. This was something that anyone could understand. Moreover, 1,000 battle merits for a drop of soul-cleansing water was so cheap. Lu Yi didn't expect that the price of exchanging soul-cleansing water here would be so affordable. What could 1,000 battle merits do? For cultivators, 1,000 battle merits could be exchanged for a blue spirit stick. 2 white spirit sticks wouldn't bring much improvement to a cultivator. But a drop of soul-cleansing water? If it was released, even the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators would fight over it. No matter which Spirit Sea Realm cultivator had a drop of soul-cleansing water, it could strengthen their soul to a certain extent. Compared to this, some true Lake Realm Ninth Order cultivators had a higher demand for soul-cleansing water, because a drop of soul-cleansing water might allow them to break through their current bottleneck and advance to the Spirit Sea realm. The two were on completely different levels. After figuring out the reason why he consumed so many battle merits, Lu Yi completely relaxed. He wasn't being sneaky. He had used a huge amount of battle merits to exchange for this soul-cleansing water. Even in front of the immortal Essence City Lord, he could still straighten his back. At the same time, beside the soul-cleansing pond, the immortal Essence City Lord, who was remembered by Lu Yi, had an ugly expression because he sensed that the development of the situation wasn't quite right. Tu Fu! Ji Yuan shouted, didn't you say that he only has a few tens of thousands of battle merits? Chapter 659. The butcher was stunned, but after thinking about it, he said, maybe the exchange rate is very low? He wasn't going to take the blame. The city lord's expression was ugly, and he didn't know what to say. Lu Ye's right to exchange battle merits for soul water was granted by the city lord himself, so he couldn't change the result. He could only pray that Lu Ye's battle merits were limited and couldn't exchange for too much soul water. Otherwise, it would really affect the foundation of the soul pool. After a while, Lu Yi, who was happily collecting soul water at the bottom of the soul pool, found that the spirit gathering funnel in front of him was suddenly distorted and collapsed. He instinctively built another spirit gathering funnel, but as soon as the second funnel was formed, it seemed to be disturbed by an inexplicable force, and it didn't have any effect at all. He came to his senses and hurriedly checked his battlefield imprint. He found that the information recorded in the battlefield imprint showed that his battle merits were only left with 836 points. 1,000 battle merits could only be used to collect one drop of soul water. The remaining 836 points were obviously not enough for one drop. He had more than 300,000 battle merits left in such a short time. It would be a lie to say that he didn't feel the pinch. After all, this was battle merits, not merit. But compared to the harvest, the price he paid was absolutely worth it. The water sack wasn't full, but there were more than 300 drops of soul water in it. Such a huge amount of resources was enough for him and his close friends to improve their spirits to an extremely exaggerated level. With no more battle merits, it was time to leave. Lu Yi carefully put away the water sack and urged his power to fly up. He originally thought that he was at the bottom of the soul pool, but in fact, after only 2 breaths, he broke through the blockade of the heavy soul fog. The surrounding light was reflected in his eyes, and he couldn't help but squint. The next moment, he felt a sharp gaze on him. Looking in the direction of the gaze, Lu Yi saw the city lord of immortal Essence City he saw last time. But at this moment, the city lord's expression was a little strange, as if he was gnashing his teeth. He gave Lu Yi the feeling that he had done something that angered both man and God, and that the city lord couldn't wait to beat him up. Could it be that the city lord had noticed his movements in the soul pool? Lu Yi couldn't help but feel a little nervous. But on second thought, what was there to be afraid of? He had used his battle merits to exchange for soul water, which was allowed by Tianji. No matter how powerful the city lord was, could he be more powerful than Tianji? Thinking of this, Lu Yi suddenly showed a look of pleasant surprise and looked at the fat figure behind the city lord. Senior. Lu Yi thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. His figure flashed and he landed in front of the butcher. He carefully sized him up and confirmed that this was the butcher who should have already died. He was a little confused. Senior, why are you? Butcher chuckled and said, in Immortal Essence City, as long as the soul pool isn't broken, spirit bodies like us won't die. It's just a temporary silence. Lu Yi didn't understand why Butcher was able to come back from the dead, but from what he said, it seemed that the soul pool had bestowed these spirit bodies with some special abilities. No wonder they always said that the soul pool was the foundation of the immortal Essence City. If that was the case, then what he saw before he fainted was not an illusion. Then Senior Lu Datong and Senior Yu Qing, they're all still alive. They're currently finishing up some quests outside. I'm sure they'll be back soon. Lu Yi let out a long sigh. That's great. Butcher raised his hand and patted Lu Ye's shoulder. He praised, "Kid, well done." Naturally, he was referring to the fact that Lu Yi had single-handedly completed the mission for them after their team had been wiped out. Although he hadn't done it perfectly, he had done his best. If not for this, Butcher wouldn't have brought Lu Yi back to the City Lord's mansion and even made the decision to include him in his team, giving him the right to enter the soul pool to recuperate. Of course, Lu Yi didn't know all of this for the time being. "By the way, Senior, your knife." Lu Yi hurriedly took out Butcher's boning knife from the storage space and handed it back. Butcher took it and casually inserted it into the knife sheath at his waist. He then cupped his hands and said, "Sir, I'll leave this kid to you. I'll leave him to you." An impatient voice rang out. "Get lost." Butcher pulled Lu Yi to the side and whispered, "I know you have a lot of questions, but there are some things I can't say. I don't know either. If you have any questions, you can ask the City Lord. He'll definitely tell you what he can tell you. No matter what, you're now considered half a citizen of Immortal Essence City." Being included in Butcher's team wasn't just a matter of words. Therefore, even if Lu Yi wasn't a cultivator from Immortal Essence City, he was still considered half a citizen of Immortal Essence City in Butcher's eyes. "Do you need my help?" Lu Yi asked. After recuperating in the soul pool, Lu Yi felt extremely energetic. Moreover, the power of his spirit seemed to be stronger than before. Butcher shook his head. "No need. The insect race's siege is coming to an end. What's left is trivial matters to wrap up. You should leave this place as soon as possible. You're a living person. If you stay here for too long, it won't do you any good." Lu Yi nodded. Even if Butcher didn't say this, Lu Yi could feel that his spirit had left his body to come to Immortal Essence City on the basis of projection. There would be some hidden dangers if his spirit and body were separated for too long. Butcher patted Lu Ye's shoulder again and left in a flash. Lu Yi watched his back disappear. Then, he turned around and respectfully bowed to the figure in front of him. "Lu Yi greets the City Lord." A cold snort sounded. "So you can see me?" "City Lord?" Why was he being so eccentric? Just now, when I saw Senior Butcher come back to life, I was unable to contain my joy. "Please forgive my rudeness, City Lord." Hearing Lu Ye's explanation, Ji Yuan's expression eased a little. However, when he thought of the soul pool and soul water, his cheeks twitched again. "Kid, your harvest this time is not small. More than 300 drops of soul water. Ever since Immortal Essence City existed, it had never lost so much soul water. In the past, although there were cultivators who could take away soul water from Immortal Essence City, it was at most 1 or 2 drops. Ji Yuan had deliberately placed them somewhere in Immortal Essence City for foreign cultivators to find. And last time, this kid had already taken away dozens of drops. Immortal Essence City had suffered heavy losses because of this kid. The loss of more than 300 drops of soul water was enough for Immortal Essence City to support 2 or 3 wars. However, he couldn't say anything. Last time, he was careless. He didn't expect this kid to have such a strange ability. This time, there was a heavenly secret. Therefore, even if his heart was about to bleed, he could only admit that he was unlucky. Fortunately, although more than 300 drops of soul water was a lot, it wasn't to the extent that it could affect the foundation of the soul pool. What did the City Lord mean? Lu Yi looked up at him. There seemed to be a hidden meaning in his words. He should know that he was collecting soul water from the soul pool, right? Thinking about how Butcher and the others didn't have soul water with them when they went out to fight, Lu Yi suspected that the City Lord in front of him couldn't condense soul water. Lu Yi took out a jade bottle and handed it to Ji Yuan. He said in a low voice, "I don't have much either." Ji Yuan looked at the jade bottle. When he reacted, he was so angry that he laughed. "Kid, what kind of person do you think I am?" That jade bottle was clearly the first one that Lu Yi filled when he was collecting soul water. After that, he noticed that the soul water condensed too quickly, so he changed to a water bag. Lu Yi quickly took back the jade bottle and took a deep breath. Forget it. A bottle of soul cleansing water was quite heavy. He said, "I misunderstood. I thought, what did you think? You thought we would split the loot? Don't even think about it." After thinking about it, Lu Yi said seriously, "City Lord, you're wrong. That's not some loot. I exchanged it with my battle merits." Ji Yuan waved his hand weakly. "Whatever you say. If you have the ability to take it, then it's yours." "Thank you, City Lord." Lu Yi immediately relaxed. "But kid, how many battle merits did you get this time?" Ji Yuan was still very curious about this. Lu Yi reported a number. The corner of Ji Yuan's eyes twitched when he heard this. He recalled how Tu Fu said that Lu Yi only had a few tens of thousands of battle merits. What bullshit tens of thousands of battle merits? That was more than 300,000. He even suspected that Tu Fu did it on purpose. Otherwise, he wouldn't have run so fast. But there was no point in worrying about it now. The thing was already in Lu Ye's hands. He couldn't ask him to spit it out, especially when the soul water was indeed exchanged with his battle merits. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Ji Yuan couldn't help but laugh. Lu Yi noticed that the atmosphere had eased a lot, so he asked, "Why are you laughing, sir?" Ji Yuan shook his head and said, "It's nothing. It's just that I haven't talked to someone like this for a long time." Then he changed the topic. "Kid, you're growing very fast." The last time he saw Lu Yi, he was only at the 8th Order Spirit Stream realm. Now, he was already at the True Lake realm. This kind of growth speed was simply shocking. For thousands of years, many cultivators from the 9 states had come to Immortal Essence City. Among them, there was no lack of talented people. Although Ji Yuan didn't know how fast they grew, it was impossible for them to be faster than this kid in front of him. Lu Yi shook his head and said, "Sir City Lord misunderstands. Junior's current situation is a bit special. In fact, Junior is only at the 5th Order Cloud River realm. It's just that the strength of my soul is stronger than my physical body. So, after coming here, I can show my true Lake Realm foundation." Ji Yuan suddenly understood. So that's how it is. It was normal. Since Lu Ye's soul had come here, what he showed was naturally the strength of his soul. However, a 5th Order Cloud River realm cultivator. His growth speed was not slow. "Sir City Lord, Junior has some questions to ask. I wonder if Sir can answer them?" "Ask away. If I can, I will naturally tell you." "This Immortal Essence City, what's going on? Isn't this a sealed world in the Spirit Stream battlefield? Why was Junior able to come here through the fused breath fruit core?" "Sealed world?" Ji Yuan whispered softly. He didn't directly answer Lu Ye's question. Instead, he asked, "In your opinion, what is a sealed world?" You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.